Hey yo, what the deal? You know what it is. It's the Don Tony Teflon, and I'm back at you with another one. And this one is the epic Bran Stark review. And for the new year, and in order for me to do a character such as Bran Stark, there's no way I could do it alone. So I am graced by people that I myself am a fan of, from YouTube, from podcasting, representing this set of Game of Thrones. First, let me introduce, or I'll take it right from the top. From the history of Westeros, we are joined by Aziz.
Hey, what's up, Tony? Good to be here. This is fun. We're going to have a good chat about Bran. What a great collection of people you got together here. Well done. So, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Right
Thank
on.
you. That's what's up. Next, you know, you have seen him with me many a times. He is the leaders of the Hypes Watch. This is the Hypes Watch, Lord Commander. No other than Don, the Kraken Wit.
Hey, Tony, man, I really appreciate the invite, and I'm doing a video with a couple personal heroes of mine, so I'm really honored to be here. Thank you, sir.
No problem. And the leader of our small council, he is without his mother this time, but he's still just as effective as if she was right there, because she's always with him. And that is James Johnson, James of Thrones.
It's my pleasure to be here as well. Tony, you're a fantastic fella, and man, you know your shit. And I'm really happy to be here to discuss it with y'all. And we're doing one of the most deep characters in this book, truly. So I'm excited about it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And last but not least, representing Radio Westeros. You see the shirt on Aziz, and you can get yours too if you go to his website and get that. And I suggest you do. That is my boy, Yoke Boy, all the way from across the pond, 5 hours ahead of time, still here joining us.
Yeah, hi guys, and thanks very much for inviting me. Really honoured to be on Teflon TV to discuss Bran.
That's what's up. Now, as we go along, the people, everyone here is in the chat room. While we start talking about certain things, if you have a question, put it right down, Don the Kraken Widow, and someone else may take your question and we'll answer it live while we're doing this. So I know that probably we won't have a chance to answer questions at the end, so this is the chance to get questions in, but try to keep it towards the part of the brand that we're talking about at that time. But if it's a prophecy or anything, put it right out there, and we will definitely try to answer that for you. So I wanted to ask a quick question before we start real quick. Do you think that we will see another Bran POV chapter in these next books? I mean, Bran, from the position that he's in, he has a lot of knowledge. You know, George doesn't like to give people knowledge of chapters. Do you think that we will see another Bran POV chapter? Aziz?
I think we will. I think it'll probably be like what we got with Dance of Dragons, where we waited, you know, at least from my perspective, 10 years for a Bran chapter between Storm and Dance, and there were, is it 3 or 4 in Dance? I think it'll be, it might only be 1 or 2. But I don't think he'll get cut entirely. There's too many things he's got to see, too many things he's got to show us, too many things that can only be shown through that point of view. But I think it will be sparse. I think it'll be just frustratingly small amounts, maybe.
Nice. Don?
It would be such a travesty if he pulled a what I like to call a feast for crows to not give a lot of your favorite characters, you know, chapters in that book. It would be a shame, and especially Bran being, you know, north of the Wall with everything involved, a win's a winner. I think we might actually get a lot of Bran in a win's a winner.
James?
Well, it would suck to not get him, but he's definitely Bran is not interacting with a whole lot of characters, so everything that happens in the Bran from here on out is going to be dense. Whatever Martin's putting in there, the memories that he's going to have, or the revelations from Bloodraven that he's going to have, they're all going to be extremely important. So I don't think it'll be a lot of chapters, but they're all going to be vital chapters, and I definitely think we're getting chapters in both Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring. And Martin just said that he's not going to be splitting, or that he'd hate to split Winds of Winter, so I don't see their separation. I definitely think we're getting chapters, yeah.
Yoke Boy.
Yeah, I agree with James there that there might not be a lot of chapters, but they'll be very important. I think Bran's arc has kind of been very slow and meandering, and it's really time for a payoff now. And I think George is going to really blow Bran if he doesn't give the reader that payoff.
Yeah, he's got so much information. I was just thinking that could it be possible that you see him in other people's chapters, maybe popping up here and there, but not as his own POV. But I hope he does get his own POV. I think he would, but it's possible that he couldn't. So let's start. We basically start with, Bran 1, and that's the way it is. So basically at this time, summer has lasted for about 9 years, and Bran is 7 years old. And he's traveling with a party of 20 men, including his father, Ned Stark, to see the king's justice done. Now, as I said before, this is the first time that he is allowed to join. Now, Robb brings up Mance Rayder at this time and thinks the man to be executed must be a wildling sworn to the king beyond the wall. But Bran thinks of Old Nan's tale when he hears about this. But at this time, Robb is wrong because the man shows up dressed in ragged black clothes of the Night's Watch. And he has lost the ear and a finger due to frostbite. Now, Lord Eddard questions this man fairly briefly, and then the men drag him and put him on the stump of the tree. Now, Theon Greyjoy, that is Ed Stark's ward, then brings the Valyrian steel sword Ice. Ed pronounces his sentence, which is death, and then raises his blade over his head. Now, we are introduced at this time to Jon Snow, who is Bran's bastard brother, and he reminds Bran not to look away before Lord Stark strikes this man's head off. And he does that with a strangle stroke. Now, the head lands near Theon, who laughs and then kicks it away. And we hear Jon right then mumble under his breath, calling Theon an ass. Now, on their way back to Winterfell, Robb and Jog argue about whether the deserter really were brave before he died, while they were racing their horses over to the bridge, leaving Bran and his pony behind. Now, this gives Eddard a chance to catch up to Bran and explain to him why that he had to be the one to kill the deserter. And he explains that the first men, who are the Stark descendants from the Stark, who the Stark's descent from, believed the man who passes the sentence should be the man who swings the sword. All right, after that, Jon calls up from ahead, and he sees that calls ahead, and he asks them to come see what Robb and them is found. Now, Robb has holding something in his arms next to a corpse larger than any wolf Bran is anything. They say that it's larger than Bran's pony. Now, Theon calls it a freak, he calls it a monster, but Jon correctly identifies the corpse as a direwolf. Theon comments that the direwolves have not been seen south of the wall for over 200 years. Bran then notices Robb cradling the small pup, and then he gives a stroke to Robb to reassure him. After this, when they inspect the mother's corpse, they find a large piece of shattered antler lodged into the throat of this direwolf. The soldiers of the company feel that this is a bad omen. Theon offers to kill the pups, but Bran tells him not to. Now, Ned Stark does tell Theon to let him do it, but then he changes his mind when Jon points out that there are 5 pups, 1 for each of his legitimate children. And since this direwolf is a sigil of hard stuff, they must have been meant for the kids to have them. Now, Bran immediately realizes that, along with everyone else, that this comparison only works because Jon is not claiming a pup for himself. Now, Robb and Bran both declare that they are willing to nurse the pups back to themselves by hand. Eddard stresses that the children must feed and raise the pups themselves, not pass them off to the servants, and they must treat them good or these pups will become dangerous. Both Robb and Bran state that they will not allow the pups to die as they begin to ride away. Jon hears a noise and then he goes back to discover a 6th pup, which is an albino, and it has red eyes that had crawled away from its mother. Bran rides out curiously, only to find Bran finds it's curious that the only pup that has opened its eyes. Now, Theon claims that the albino will die quicker than the others, but Jon disagrees, and he claims that pup for himself. So
you can breathe now.
Thank you very much. So, from that whole situation, I get, to me, this man who passes the sentence must swing the sword. That hasn't really worked out for the Starks. I think that most of these people who have passed this sentence and swung the sword probably got killed themselves. I think Theon is the only one who actually has not been killed yet, but you can say that Theon has been killed when he's transformed the Reek. So I don't know what that actually means, but all these people, when they're cutting people's heads off, they are all dying. So about that section, we could start with James Johnson. How did you take that chapter of Bran?
That chapter to me is the introduction not just to Bran, but to this. It is the first chapter, I mean, with the exception of the prologue, and it is the introduction. I don't think it's by chance that Bran is the first. Obviously, it's not. I don't know how to approach this because there's so much in the fucking chapter, but it's intentional that Bran is the first chapter. And in the first 2 paragraphs of the chapter, Martin lays out the season that we're in, that Bran's a kid and is going somewhere that he doesn't fully understand. He thinks this kid's one thing, he thinks it's another. Obviously, no one wants to tell him the entirety of the truth. And then he sets out, one way or another, whoever, I don't know what it means. I mean, I got my own opinions, but who knows what it means. But he thinks what old Nan tells him. The wildlings were cruel men, she said, slayers and slavers and thieves. They consort with giants and ghouls, stole girl children in the dead of night, drank blood from polished horns, and their women lay with the others in the long night to sire terrible half-human children. Whatever that means, that's the second paragraph. Martin has a lot of this planned out to the very end, which means the beginning is went on reread in hindsight. Whatever he does at the end, the beginning is going to be, oh, well, that's what he's talking about right there. Key. And you're right, the man who passes the sentence must swing the sword. I'm of the opinion that Bran is the only one who can end whatever this is. I think the world has to fight it too, but Bran, being the central omnipotent god at the end of this, he's the only one who can stop it. And we're watching this little boy grow up to be the thing that can end whatever it is that he's fighting. And the man who passes the sentence must swing the sword. Bran's got to decide what's more important and act on it.
Nice. Yo, boy, we see that when they find the direwolves, they have the antler. It slides into the neck of the direwolves. When you read that, what does that mean to you?
Well, you know, in the fandom, it's been well pointed out that the foreshadowing, you know, the downfall of the Starks and the Baratheons, and it's you know, such an important moment. We had the prologue with the others, and then we get a grounding of real characters, and then this other kind of mystical thing with the direwolves. And it's especially important to Bran because you know, maybe with the exception of Jon, Bran has just got this develops this intense relationship with his direwolf and his warging. So it's very important to establish Bran with his, you know, seeing the direwolves.
Nice. Aziz. So George starts off with a Bran chapter. Now, Bran, the youngest brother, he has a lot of other characters. That Jon's there, Robb's there. We have other people there. Ned's there. They have POVs. Why do you think he started with Bran?
That's a great question. And then, you know, this chapter, like James said, is just full of so many different things going on at once. And it's because it's an introductory chapter. We're learning all about things that were introduced for the first time, things that we kind of take for granted now. We've all, you know, been through the series enough times. It all seems just like part of the whole timeline. We kind of forget sometimes where it all started and where these things began. But I think he did it with Bran because I think he wanted to present these things from the eyes of someone who was an innocent, someone who wouldn't have a lot of opinions. It was just one of the first things that the chapter points out is that he's just now old enough to witness justice being done. So he doesn't have a lot of preconceived notions. He doesn't have any experience with it. He's maybe heard a few things from his older brothers, but it's probably not something they talk about a lot. You know, we saw that guy get his head chopped off. Yeah, good story. But also there's a lot of subtleties in it. Even in this first chapter where he's trying to give a lot away, where he's trying to give a lot of information at once, there's still really sneaky things, like the way the chapter ends. When Jon is sitting there saying, "Don't you hear it? Don't you hear the sound?" Nobody hears it. Well, that's because Ghost doesn't make sounds. That was him hearing it, you know, in his head. That was a warg link thing happening right in front of our eyes before we even know that's a possibility. We don't even know wargs are a thing in this story at that point. But that's what's happening. He's hearing something. Jon is saying, "I hear that. Don't you hear that?" But Ghost doesn't make a sound. We don't even know that Ghost doesn't make a sound yet. That doesn't come out till later. So this chapter is wonderful because it already lays the groundwork for why you're going to have to read it again, even when you're just getting started.
Exactly. Down the cracking whip. This chapter. What did this chapter mean to you? What do you take away from it?
I like how it opens up with Bran and also finding the direwolves. He names his wolf Summer, you know, and I think Bran will actually be united with his wolf throughout this entire thing, and they will actually find summer again, or at least spring. You know, so I think it's going to open with Bran. I think it's going to close with Bran.
Nice. Do you have any questions in the chat room about anything
Yeah,
there?
you know what? One that I thought was really cool, and let me remind everybody, as we go through the different parts of Bran, we'll take questions concerning that part. You know, and I saw a lot of good questions that have, you know, to do with later topics. But this one in particular, from Renee M. Where do you think is the direwolf's father? So was there another giant direwolf running around, or was it a, you know, just regular wolf? I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it kind
That's a
of
good
links into how did the mother direwolf get south of the wall. You know, if they haven't been south, they must have got past the wall. So it does kind of open up the crackpots of, you know, did Bloodraven transport the female direwolf? Was she impregnated north of the wall? So it's an interesting question that creates more questions.
Right.
We haven't seen any other direwolves at all. We've still only seen the Stark direwolves, right? There haven't been any other
Right.
sightings of like naturally occurring, not even like the sounds of them, right? We haven't even heard howling, I don't think. So it just makes them even more special in retrospect, which again, you wouldn't know until you reread and you realize, wow, these are still, we've read the 5 books, you start back at the beginning, you're like, these are the only direwolves. How about
Yeah,
that?
you would think that Varamir would have had a direwolf in his pack, wouldn't you? If there were direwolves north of the wall, you think Varamir would have found one. But I mean, he's very interested in Ghost for that reason that he hasn't found one.
Maybe we're in for some extra direwolf action in the Winds of Winter.
Actually, that's simultaneously in this world there are only one small group of dragons and one small group of direwolves around the same time. Although the direwolves came first. Something.
That's true.
You know what? I think Tony is having a bit of difficulty. So do you guys want to
Is
go...
there any more questions? Is there any more questions we can answer from the chat room while Tony sorts his tech problem out?
It would be nice if in the comments, if you got a question in the comments directly dealing with this chapter, if you could write that we're dealing with this particular chapter, because there's a lot of questions going on, and though interesting, like Alex said, they're not dealing with this particular chapter.
Holy, I'm back. What happened?
Tony, what happened?
What happened? It was me. I thought it was you.
No.
I'm over here like, what happened to you guys? You guys left me. What happened to everybody?
Nah, man, we can hold it down, man. We'll hold it down for you.
Thank you. God, we got a lot of viewers, 148 viewers. That's the most I've ever seen.
Yeah, wow. Yeah,
Thank you for holding it down. I'm so sorry that I have no idea what happened. I live very rural area by Saratoga Springs, New York, and sometimes my internet service isn't the best.
Now, you know what? I think we have such a good community, all the viewers, all the commenters, and everything. I think they understand just a little bit of technical difficulties on a live event of this magnitude.
Well,
How about that? Yeah.
Perfect. I'm sorry again, but whatever y'all talking about, please continue.
No, we were. I think things got a little out of hand in the comments section, but we were going to take any additional questions for the part 1 of the Starks finding the direwolves and what it means and stuff like that, but we were just about to get ready to transition into part 2.
Part 2. All right. So basically, well, the next moment we have dealing with Bran that this is the king coming to Winterfell with his entourage. Now I'm going to try to pick it up after Ned Stark has accepted the job as hand to the king to keep things moving along. Now most of the men leave to go hunting for boar, and Bran, Rickon, Jon, Arya, and Sansa stay behind. Now Jon at this time is angry, and it confuses Bran because she thinks Jon should be happy going off with Benjen. Now Bran is excited about leaving Winterfell and going to Queen's Landing. He's especially excited about being on a real horse for the first time and not a pony. He also wants to meet Barristan the Bold, who he claims to be the best knight alive. And he dreams about being a member of the King's Guard himself, which at this time you can see he doesn't consider Jaime Lannister a member of the King's Guard because Robb told him how Jaime killed the king. Now, Bran then starts to think of stories of old Nans and the ghosts of dragon skulls on the wall in King's Landing. Now, after trying to... Is everything all right?
Yeah.
All right, all right. After trying to teach his wolf fetch, he decides to go climbing, and then we learn his love of climbing from this situation. Now, his wolf, direwolf, watches him go up, and as he goes up, the direwolf keeps howling at him. And Bran starts to think that he's trying to warn him, but he keeps going up anyway. Now, after he swings around some gargoyle statues, he hears a pretty big, huge political conversation between two people. Now, Cersei is telling Jaime that they are at risk and how much Robert loves Ned. And then we hear Littlefinger's name mentioned. We hear Stannis' name mentioned. We hear Renly's name mentioned, all between them. Now, realizing that they're talking about his father, Bran wants to see his face, so he hangs upside down on the gargoyle and tries to take a look. Now, by this time, the talking has turned to touching. And as he watches them go at it, Cersei opens her eyes and spots him. Then he loses his grip and falls. Now, while he's falling and dangling, both Cersei and Jaime look over at him and see him hanging down. Then Jaime pulls him up. After Jaime asks him how old he is, we get the line from Jaime, "The things I do for love," and then he pushes him over, and then we see Bran hit the floor. We don't actually see it, but he hits the floor. Now, while Bran is in the coma, we get this person who is called the Cat's Paw Assassin comes and tries to murder Bran, but that person is killed by his direwolf. Now, after that's probably a good spot to stop right there. So that basically leads us for Bran waking up, and after he wakes up, this is when he does name his wolf finally Summer when he wakes up, after he gets up, after he sees the vision from the three-eyed crow, the first visions from the crow at this time. So if you would like to go with anyone right here, who do you think sent the assassin? We could start with your boy, if you wish. If you have an opinion on it.
I'm not settled, you know. When I read the books, I thought it was Mance, because when Mance is introduced, you get that story that he was at Winterfell, and the cat's paw was found with silver coins, and Mance left from beyond the wall with silver coins. So I thought that could have been a clue. I'm not sold on that, but it's an interesting idea. I was never really happy with the idea that it was Joffrey, because it all seems so circumstantial, and I got the sense that George was setting us up for a twist, but I could be wrong. So I'm very open-minded about who it could be, and another candidate is Littlefinger. Some people think as well.
I'm up in the air with it, to tell you the truth. It's hard for me to think. I just can't go with Joffrey. I really can't. I just don't care. I just don't want to believe that Joffrey did. Does anyone else has any thoughts on who they think the Cat's Paw Assassin was sent by?
No. On that
I like the idea. I have without saying anything regarding who I think it was that hasn't already been said, because I don't have anything new to add to what other people have already said. But whether if you think it was Joffrey, it leads to you thinking that Joffrey did the Mandon Moore thing too, because it's a similar kind of clumsy, semi-clumsy, not particularly planned well assassination attempt that doesn't seem to be the mark of somebody that's a deep thinker. But that could be on purpose. Like if Littlefinger did it, then you realize that he intentionally did it in a way that would get the guy caught, because that's kind of the point. He wants the two families to fight each other. He doesn't want Bran dead and no one to know what happened. Just that's pointless.
Right.
Well, the video I got, Tyrion's final lesson, talks about who I think it is. I think it's Varys, and there's not a whole lot of evidence for it. The reason I think it's Varys is because it's Littlefinger's blade. He's willing to admit that. But he says he lost it in a bet to Tyrion. And he says it almost sincerely, we think. And then later we find out that Tyrion would not have lost that bet because he never bets against his brother. It's never been brought up again since then directly. It's been alluded to. And this is kind of a series of situations for Tyrion in which he thinks he knows who did fill in the blank. He thinks he knows who ordered the killing of the bastards. He thinks he knows who tried to kill him on the beach at the Battle of Blackwater, and he thinks he knows who tried to kill Bran. To me, all of these ultimately lead back to Varys. If you go reread the chapter where Ned and Catelyn, I think it's just Ned, questions Varys and Littlefinger about it. Varys is the one who knows what's up. I mean, Varys pretends to not know what's up, and Littlefinger says, well, for once, I know what's up and you don't. It was my blade, but I lost it. I think he really thinks he lost it. I think Varys got somebody to tell him that it was Tyrion he was switching, and all this is crack pottery, I'm well aware, but I'm pretty sure Varys is Tyrion's nemesis. And that ultimately the whole idea is that the things that Tyrion finds sinful are actually being perpetrated by the person he most respects. Whereas he doesn't like his father because he thinks his father's an asshole. What he likes, Varys. Tinfoil, I know, but anyway, Tyrion's final lesson video kind of talks more about that. And the motivation for him to do it is to not the conversation that Varys has with Magister Illyrio about whether it's they need to go ahead and act or whether they were trying to keep things calm and satiated until they could get fake Aegon or real Aegon into power. But they're talking about whether it's too late and things are getting fucked up. And if they know that Bran knows, arguably, who killed Jaime, who threw him from the tower, that could disrupt everything. It throws Cersei now having an incestuous relationship and cheating on Robert. She's gonna get killed. The children are arguably bastards, and Varys knows all that. I don't think there's a question Varys knows that. All right, let it go.
No, it's quite. I have no idea. I just can't go with Joffrey. I'm not gonna buy this. Joffrey hired an assassin and to kill Bran. To suppress Robert. Come on. I can't go with that whatsoever. Not at all. I take any other of those things over that, without a doubt. But a thing that to me interesting about this part too is that a lot of people want to talk about Cersei and Jaime fucking, but that's such a small part. Really, it's the conversation that they're having that's more interesting than them actually fucking that Bran is hearing more than everything. Does anybody have any thoughts of the conversation that Jaime and Cersei were having?
Well, it kind of doesn't it kind of set us on of a mind that this is what starts us to think about their involvement in the assassination of Jon Arryn?
Yes.
Yeah. So we get even more sidetracked away from the truth on that.
Yeah.
I think it says the things I do for love. He said with loathing, if my memory serves correct. So it's interesting that Jaime is immediately the kind of subservient one in their relationship, where he's doing it for Cersei. You know, he's the one that's doing the real shitty thing of chucking a kid out the window, but he's doing it for love, but at the same time, this word loathing. So he's kind of, you know, the love and the loathing juxtaposed. I think it's interesting, and it really sets the scene for Jaime as someone that's, you know, done these shit things, but not for himself. He's been kind of led astray by Cersei over the years.
And is he loathing the act, or is he loathing Cersei, or what I think is most likely he loathed himself?
Yeah, loathes himself.
He loves Cersei.
Yeah. Maybe it's a mix of all those things.
And this is also, again, we're still learning about these characters at the time. We learn more about the personalities of Jaime and Cersei. This is some of the first scenes we've had with them, other than we've gotten people's opinions. They're not particularly positive opinions. Obviously, Jaime's already called the Kingslayer. That doesn't sound... You don't get a positive reaction from that the first time you see it. And they're kind of painted as arrogant and this and that, but you get more detail. It's just starting to fill out who these characters are, and it's pretty interesting. I think that's important.
I always took it as, that Jaime is more dominant than Cersei when it comes down to it. That I know people like Jaime and they want to give Jaime the pass on these things, but to me, it's Jaime's the bad guy. I think he corrupts Cersei more than the other way around. Even in that sex scene, you see that she says no in that sex scene to him, and then he's, come on, let's do it, and she's like, no. And then he grabs her, and then once she says no, then she starts beginning again with him, you know what I mean? But in the beginning, she's saying no. She's trying to have a conversation. He's like, shut up and get over here, So I understand that he does do things out of love for her, but I think Jaime's just an evil bastard at heart. And I think he enjoys doing these bad things, me personally.
I respect where you're coming from. I think differently. I think Cersei is bad because she was told when she was a little kid she's doomed, and she's spent her entire life trying to manipulate that, and she's oppressed in the sense that she can't become anything more than this vestibule for children and picture of honor or grace is what she's supposed to be. So it's all manipulation she's supposed to use. She's not that good at it. But the only thing she's ever manipulated well is Jaime, and because she got him when he was young, just like she did her own children, she made him love her, and she doesn't love him. So to me, even though he does fucked up things, it's all for love. And when he rapes her in the TV show, in the book, it's not quite the same. And I do think, let's get rid of the fucking rape thing because that's not the point. He is pissed off because he loves her and wants to be with her and can't understand why she doesn't want to be with him. She, on the other hand, doesn't feel the same way. She just lost her kid. She's living... Anyway, I think it's love, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, that's the way the book is interpreted, so anyone could see it the way they see it and stuff like that. But I hate Jaime, so I'm biased, and I'll say it straight up. I hate him.
Really?
And Cersei's a woman. I mean, she doesn't have a lot of power in this world, as most women don't. So I hate Jaime. That's it. Any questions in the chat about anything that we said right there, Don?
Well, first off, I understand how you could hate Jaime, but I do have to present the fact that he does have a lot of redeeming qualities, sir.
Oh, stop it.
He really does.
Stop it.
Anyways,
let's not go there. This is a Bran video.
Yeah. Correct. Two things here. There is one question that I pulled out, but then after that, I want to read a dream of Bran's. After he got pushed out the window.
Cool.
And it's very interesting. But first off, from Jake McIntyre, if Bran would not have fallen, do you guys think that Bran would have had what it takes mentally to be a great knight, or would he have, turned out to be a great, I guess, Winterfell lord, a great Stark, great fighter?
I think personally, well, we see that who does he kick? He kicks Thomas. He kicks Thomas' ass, but that's not saying much. So who knows? Arya is a better shot with the bow than he was at that time, right? So right. Who knows if he would have been a great knight or a great lord? It's hard to tell. I guess they want you to believe that he would have been. That's what they're setting up, that he would have been. So I guess you have to say yes.
I think as adventurous as Bran is, I think he would have turned out to be a badass, just a badass Stark, like punch you in the mouth kind of guy.
I think that Maester Luwin gave up too easily on the idea of Bran being the arms and Hodor being the legs, like, little Master Blaster action.
It could have been some Voltron back in the day type situation. They could have got down with that, you know? It would have worked.
Yeah, Mira gets in there somewhere too, right? They all just OSHA climbs on. They just do some sort of conglomerate.
He's a Hodor. He's strong enough to hold them, and that's the bottom line.
It's like, by your powers combined, I am Captain Planet. Bran is Captain Planet confirmed.
I never liked Captain Planet.
Oh,
I never liked that show. That show was corny. You know, Transformers guy, man. I think it's Captain Planet. What is this that you want?
Everybody watched Captain Planet, and everybody had the ring. Like, you got it in a little cereal box or.
I feel like we're getting sidetracked.
Yeah.
Did you want to read something? You said.
Yeah. It was Bran's dream of him in a coma and falling out. It seemed as though he had been falling for years. Fly, a voice whispered in the darkness, but Bran did not know how to fly, so all he could do was fall. Maester Luwin made a little boy of clay, baked him till he was hard and brittle, dressed him in Bran's clothes, and flung him off a roof. Bran remembered the way he shattered. "But I'd never fall," he said, falling. The ground was so far below him he could barely make it out through the gray mist that whirled around him. But he could feel how fast he was falling, and he knew what was waiting for him down there. Even in dreams, you could not fall forever. He would wake in the instant before you hit the ground, he knew. You always woke up in the instant before you hit the ground. "And if you don't?" the voice asked. The ground was closer now, still far away. 1,000 miles away, but closer than it had been. It was cold here in the darkness. There was no sun, no stars, only the ground below, coming up to smash him in the gray mist, in the whispering voice. He wanted to cry. Not cry. Fly. "I can't fly," Bran said. "I can't. I can't." "How do you know? Have you ever tried?" The voice was high and thin. Bran looked around to see where it was coming from. A crow was spiraling down with him, just out of reach, following him as he fell. "Help me," he said. "I'm trying," the crow replied. "Say, got any corn?" Bran reached into his pocket as the darkness spun dizzily around him. When he pulled his hand out, golden kernels slid from beneath his fingers into the air. They fell with him. The crow landed on his hand and began to eat. "Are you really a crow?" Bran asked. "Are you really falling?" The crow asked back. "It's just a dream," Bran said. "Is it?" asked the crow. I'll end that one there.
nice.
Nice. Yeah, so we get our little introduction to Bloodraven right here, right off the back. Obviously, no one knows that it's Bloodraven at this time.
Immediately, yeah.
You know, it's very fast, right off the book back. Do you think that George had that plan, that this guy was Blood Brandon Rivers right off the back, or all the way from the beginning of this time?
I still don't think it is.
Yeah,
Go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
I think he said that it was. I forget where. And there's a little clue, a small clue for it later when the raven that comes to deliver the news of Eddard's execution is bloody. It's been torn up by a hawk. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember where it was, whether it was an SSM or something. But yeah, I think that he conceived of the character. He didn't have the name Bloodraven. He didn't know that he was going to be a Targaryen bastard. He didn't know about the Blackfire rebellions. He didn't know any of that. But he had the seed of the idea for this character that was kind of in the background and maybe moving some things around. But I don't remember all those exactly what maybe someone else remembers some of those details from what George has said. But
I've seen a lot of interviews recently. I don't know why I just dove into George so much recently, but I was always under the impression that like he started writing these books and he had all of this, stuff written down of where he wanted it to go, but it turns out he wrote that first chapter where they find the pups and everything just while he was trying to write a different book. And he said it just came to him, and he knew about the summer and the different weather, you know, that was going on and whatnot. So it kind of, you know, kicked me in the butt, you know, because I was like, oh, George had all of this planned out all along, but it turns out he really didn't, and he just started building and building and building. You know, now whether he knew that was Bloodraven at the beginning, I don't know anything about that.
Now, I think Aziz is right, definitely, with the way that when you see later on, when you get the message from Ned Stark, that definitely ties into anything with Bloodraven. We had Yo boy, you have anything to say about what we just talked about?
No, sorry.
Perfect. That's right. Anything in the chat room before we go on to the next section of Bran?
No, everybody's
I do what
off topic, just like
one question I saw people asking about, sort of, or at least in general, talking about was how the fall itself, like how crucial was Bran's fall into getting him, you know, to be able to communicate. Was that crucial to was becoming crippled and being in a coma? How important was that? You know,
well, George deals with this in other ways, doesn't he? Like mutilation and becoming disabled. If you look at Jaime, he starts to regain honor when he loses something, when he gets mutilated. And, you know, Theon loses penis, and, you know, we think that's, in other ways, it develops his characters. So George likes this idea that you take something away from a character and perhaps replace it with something else. And the key character for this is Bran, who you know is told he's going to fly after losing his legs.
I hear. Sounds right to me. Sounds good to me on that. But you know, George does things the way he wants to do them, and as Aziz said, he makes these things so that there's no way that you can read this one time without going back. You have to go back. This is the way it's written, and
it's different every time.
It is. It's like this is the first book we're talking about, and there's still things that's been out the longest, and there's still a lot of things we can't even that everyone's name decided on yet. So that just shows you how great this one is written. So right now, at this point, we see Bran and Rickon playing with the direwolves. Well, Bran watching Rickon play with the direwolves, and we really get a good description of them. Shaggy Dog is black with fire green eyes. Summer is now silver with smoke yellow eyes. And even though Greywind is bigger than Summer, Bran thinks that Summer is smarter. Bran starts feeling bad that he can't play, and he starts to call the Crow a liar, saying that he could fly. Old Nan agrees and says crows are liars and offers to tell Bran the story about one, but Bran turns it down. Now we get background right here on Old Nan and find out that she's lived out most of her family and how she came to Winterfell. We get background on Hodor, learn that his name isn't Hodor, and even Old Nan doesn't know why he says Hodor, just that everybody started calling him Hodor after that became the only thing that he could say. We also see a more disrespectful Bran at this point, snapping back at Old Nan when he says stuff about her stories, and gets mad that he run and climb, and is feeling sorry for himself, and he thinks that Robb and Rickon are the only ones left with him at Winterfell, and since Robb has become Lord, he sees the changes in him. He says he doesn't smile anymore, and he has no time for him. Nan at this time offers to tell him a story about Bran the Builder. Bran wants to hear a scary one, and then we hear Old Nan reply, "Oh, sweet summer child of mine." And then Old Nan goes into the story of the others at this particular time. Now, she gets interrupted by Maester Lewis before she could finish, and then Bran goes to meet Tyrion, who is already in a meeting with Robb. Now, Robb at this point is sitting in his father's high seat, wearing his armor with his sword across his lap, and even Bran knows what this means when you greet a guest with an unsheathed sword and can feel the hostility in the room. Robb makes this point by offering only the men of the Night's Watch hospitality to stay. Tyrion understands this and calls Robb a boy. Robb gets mad, insisting that he is the Lord of Winterfell. Tyrion responds that if he is, then he needs to learn to short a lord's courtesy. courtesy. When Bran is brought forward, Tyrion knows that the news of the survival. When Bran is brought forward, Tyrion knows that the news of his survival is true and declares that the Starks are hard to clear. Robb declares the Lannisters had best remember this. Tyrion questions Bran. Maester Luwin is quick to add that Bran does not remember everything, and Tyrion thinks that it's quite curious. Robb is suspicious, and then after that is when Tyrion breaks out his plans for Bran's saddle. Master Lewis is upset that he didn't think of this idea for the saddle himself. Now Robb is suspicious of Tyrion's motive, in which Tyrion replies to Jon that he has a weak spot for cripples, bastards, and broken things. Rickon then shows up with the direwolves, and they growl and approach Tyrion. Theon says they don't like the smell of Tyrion. The direwolves snap at Tyrion before they can get a hold of him, driving him back. Tyrion falls down, and he gets them away. That evening, Robb and Bran host the Night's Watchmen for dinner. Yoren says that Benjen is probably dead, but Robb says no. That someone from the Night's Watch says that Benjen knows the haunted forest better than anyone, which makes Bran think of the children of the forest. And he says the children will save him. Maester Luwin says that they are all dead, and Yoren disagrees with him. The Black Brothers bring up Benjen Stark again. I think that is all at that particular time. At that night, Robb then brings Bran up to his room, and he says that he could teach him how to ride the horse later. They could visit the wall and visit Jon. Now, my question to y'all is, right here off the bat, we get talk about this crow. And we hear Bran say that the crow is a liar. And then we hear Old Nan say right after that that he's telling the truth. Crows are liars. So could it be taken from that Blood Raven may not be as trustworthy as people think that he is? A history of Westeros. Let's start with you.
Right on. Well, I think that I have a couple of ways of looking at this. I don't think he's like completely untrustworthy, like he's evil or something, like he's working for the others or something like that. But I do think that he's not nearly telling the whole story, because that's kind of how he operated. He was a real, in life, looking at his history, he was a real like control of information kind of guy. He wanted certain things to be forgotten about. He took a real hard line stance about certain things. He was real black and white about how he treated, the Blackfires, I suppose, and in general other people, how he dealt out justice. He was a lot like Stannis in a lot of ways in that regard, except he had a sense of humor. But yeah, so I guess I'd have to say that there's some dark things that we're not being told, but I think he still has good motives overall, but I don't think that he cares about Bran as a human being. I think he just cares about the end result. So if you're Bran, watch out. But he's not just out to get you, that kind of thing.
James of Thrones.
Ooh, I understand why y'all all think it's Blood Raven. I really do. It's the majority opinion. I don't, except for the fact that he's on the Green Seer throne. I want to know if there's anything else that y'all think points to. Oh yeah, the real question was whether he's a liar or not. Bran thinks he's a liar, in my opinion, because he tells him things in the dream that Alex just read to us that imply things he can't believe. He tells him to fly. He can't fly. But Blood Raven tells him at the end of this chapter, you'll never walk again, but you will fly. So I understand where y'all are coming from, and the crows are all liars. Somebody wrote, I think, Iron Trone on the comments wrote that Old Nan got a 98% on PolitiFact. Old Nan, I think, is generally reliable. Obviously, I think she's aware that the stories are a little dated and you lose a little bit, but the crows are fucking liars. And Coldhands has crows all around him. They're talking. Like, if he says something, they say something. This whole thing is a manipulation, in my opinion. And we mentioned earlier in the previous chapter during the previous chapter over whether he needed to have this injury in order to learn these abilities. And I loved what you said, Yoke Boy. That I think you nailed that. That he loves to take something away and give something else, which is probably what he thinks about his own childhood. Martin does, because he didn't have a lot of access to the world. He felt a little closed in, but as a result, he ended up having this beautiful mind. But
that's a really good point, man. That's quite meta, but that's an interesting thought, isn't it?
But if he didn't, and I think you're right about that. I had to say I appreciate the compliment, but what you said is fucking brilliant. The idea of taking something away and adding something, but I'm not sure that whoever the Three-Eyed Crow is, I'm not sure the Three-Eyed Crow could have found Bran had Bran not had these dreams. Whatever existed, because Bran has, I assume that throughout all of these, his entire childhood, he had dreamt, but it's only when he's injured that he has dreams in which the Three-Eyed Crow reaches out to him. To me, either he's existing within this werewood net, and the Three-Eyed Crow's like, holy shit, that's the thing that I need, and goes to get him. I don't understand how, and I know they can detect each other. We know that wargs can detect each other. Anyway, I don't understand why. Do y'all think it's possible? Do any of y'all have an inkling that it's possible that the Three-Eyed Crow is not Bloodraven? And by that, I've got my own opinions that it's Coldhands is the Night's King, who is convinced the Bloodraven to sit the throne for him because he can't go into the wall because he's a white. So that gets really complicated. But are y'all dead set on Bloodraven as the Three-Eyed Crow?
I have to say I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
thousand eyes in one thing is pretty strong.
It's pretty hard to unargue that point.
And then the whole my uncle's name is Brendan, and well, there's a good chance that he was named after me.
Yeah. His name is Brendan, which matches. He's got the thousand eyes in one quote. He's got the one eye. He's got the quote about the brothers, a brother that I loved, a brother that I had. That all lines up with who Bloodraven was. And I think there's another good one, but I don't remember.
I need to clarify that I do think I misspoke, and I apologize, and I'm interrupting you, Aziz. It's not that I don't think he is in Bran's dreams as this image of. My question is whether he's the Green Seer. I'm not really making much sense, but I agree that he kind of admits it, exactly what you just said, Aziz, that I've been watching you the whole time. And that's my chapter, and I actually had it open to that.
Oh, cool.
So, I agree with you on that one.
Right on.
Yo,
whether
boy.
he's
Yo, boy.
Well, what's up?
Oh, we got old Nan, pretty reliable, saying that this crow's a liars, right? You got Bran saying the lies. First thing they think of the lies. Now this guy acts like he's the father figure. Bran, he's gonna show him the light. He's gonna help him do everything. Are you buying that situation with Bloodraven there? Is he a liar? What's going on?
First of all, I wonder what old Nan's history is with someone from the Watch. I wonder, what made her say that. Could it be hinting to old Nan having a history with a man from the Night's Watch? But as to the blood, is Bloodraven reliable? I was kind of with Aziz that I think that he's probably using Bran to what ends. We think, is it good? Is it evil? Why can't it be something in between? This is a grey story. So why do we have to think, is he good or is he bad? Why can't it be something more complicated, where it's perhaps something essential that is in the middle of good and bad?
I hear you. I think the bastard's up to something. I don't trust that blood raisin.
He did it. He did it.
That's right. Do we have any questions in the chat dealing with this? We just talked about pretty big section there dealing with that. Tyrion, we had Tyrion and everything else. Tyrion getting the saddle. Tyrion getting snapped at. Tyrion making the saddle right there. A lot of things happen in that chapter right there with Tyrion and Jon and Robb laying the sword on his lap and everything else. Do you think, down the cracking whip, do you think that Robb was justified for treating Tyrion the way he did, coming in there like that right off the bat? Or do you think he should have had a little bit more courtesy first? and play this more
He
political.
definitely. I think from an honor standpoint, you do need to have a little bit more courtesy, but boys will be boys, I guess.
Yeah, he's a
You know.
young kid. He's a young kid,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He's
Extenuating
the young wolf.
circumstances.
Yeah, he's the young wolf. But definitely but it just plays into Tyrion's character of just the shit hand he's kind of been dealt. Cripples, bastards, and broken things. So uh, Robb was gonna do what Robb was gonna do anyways. So.
Rob's a little bit of got a bit of a temper, and he had just found out what he found out about the accusations against the Lannisters, and that's just how he's got to be, I guess. I think I agree with that.
That he's right to do it.
We had someone in the chat remind us of something important, and I just lost it, but I lost who it was that said it, but it's a great reminder that Bran in Welsh means crow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always cool. It's hard to know if George did that on purpose or if it even matters, but it's just cool regardless.
Yeah, I like the description you get at the direwolves here. You see how shaggy dog, how vicious, black, green eyes. I wonder if that means something in the end. It seems like, well, we'll get to this in a little bit, but Blood Raven is not just communicating with Bran. He's communicating with a bunch of people in the Stark family right here. I think at this particular time, so why he settles for Bran over the other ones is still up to debate to me. He could have. Why not mess with Rickon? Why not have Rickon be the one to go up there and do that stuff? He seems to have a powerful walking ability and stuff, and he seems to be trying to contact with Rickon at that same time. So. It's all up for debate, I guess. Are we good on the questions there right now?
We are.
All right. This is my last section of reading. And I'm so happy to do this part and then turn it over to the rest of y'all to read for the rest of the day. So, while testing the new saddle, Bran gets ambushed by a group of wildlings and Night Watch deserters. He is rescued by Robb, Theon, Grey Worm, and Summer. Now we are introduced to Arya at this time, and it's the faith in the old gods that bonds her with Bran. Now she notices that Hodor has bit giant's blood in him and tells him the stories of beyond the wall. After Ned Stark is arrested, Robb calls the banners, and Bran watches the fight between Jon and the great Robb. Robb then takes off south, and Arya tells Bran that they should go, all the swords should be going north. Now, Roger Cassell is training new recruits in the yard of Winterfell. Mason Lewis is taking measurements of a comet through the lens tube. Bran makes comments that the recruits do not fight very well, and that he is told then that his father has taken the best guards with him to King's Landing. Then Bran suggests that he should fight from the back of Hodor, and Lewis dismisses this idea as impractical. Bran then talks about a blind knight named Simon Star Eyes, but Lewis insists that is only a story, and Bran must make up his mind to put his dreams aside. Now, the mention of dreams reminds Bran of a new dream of the three-eyed crow. The dream was very sad. He tells Lewin how the crow brought him down to the crypts and his father was there. His father was sad because of Jon. Now Mason Lewis calls for Arya, and she carries Bran in her arms down to the Winterfell crypts. Now Summer and Arya seem uncomfortable, and Bran states that the statue there were the kings of winter. Arya tells him that winter has no king, but they proceed down the long corridor past the statues. Summer refuses to stop and leaves. Bran then stops and starts pointing out all the statues until they reach the statues at the end for Lord Rickon, for Brandon, Lyanna, and Lord Rickon. Lewin sticks his hand, his arm into the future tomb of Lord Eddard Stark, and Shaggy Dog springs out and savages Mason Lewin's arm. Bran calls Summer, who slams at the Shaggy Dog, knocking the wolf off of Lewin. Arya goes to assist Lewin. As the wolves fight, Rickon appears in the mouth of Eddard's tomb, telling Lewin that leave father be. When Bran tells Rickon father is not there, Rickon states that he saw him there last night and that he would be coming home. Lewin, now looking unsure, tells Rickon that Shaggy Dog was supposed to be chained. Rickon replies that the dog does not like to be chained, and Lewin states that this is the third man that Shaggy Dog has savaged in a matter of days. Now Bran calmly states that he will go to the tower with Mason Lewin and him and Asha go up there with him. Now Asha bandaged Maester Lewin's wound. Following his instruction, Lewin tries to explain to the boys the logic of them. The logic of them both dreaming the same dream is just not possible. He says that Rickon is too young to understand, to which Rickon states that he is 4. He then tells Bran that he is old enough to know that dreams are just dreams. Asha adds that some dreams are just more than dreams and some dreams are not, and the children of forest could teach them a thing or two about dreams. Lewin's tail is then cut off when the 2 direwolves start howling. The direwolves turn quiet as a bloody messenger raven appears. Even Lewin is not sure he wants to open the message. Bran, hugging Rickon hard, asks what the message is. Osha says to him he already knows what it is. Maester Lewin reads the message, tears it up, and then tells them they need to find a stone carver who knew the likeness of their father. So, that is the death of Lord Eddard Stark.
It's so creepy.
It is. And I love that chapter myself. I love the way it's written, the way Shaggy Dog jumps out of the whole thing, everything about it. It's just like a horror story. It's one of the best things that I think that he's written from that part right there. One of my favorite of all time. Start with James Johnson. What do you take from all that?
Sad. I mean, that's the last moment where they think that life's going to move on after the accident. That's the moment where they realize, or the end of that chapter is for them the break of everything they thought was their father died. It's the end of their family. Somebody else has got to take over. It's the end of everything they thought they knew. The comet is in that chapter. That comet is key. I would go watch my comet video, but that comet is key in my opinion. That comet's coming back. I don't think it's magic. I think it's serendipitous that it happened to be around the same time. But Maester Lewin is literally taking measurements of that comet, and the Isaac Newton figuring out comets was how we got calculus, and ultimately force equals mass times acceleration, which is the Industrial Revolution. So that's key. It's really sad. That chapter is sad to me because it's the first time we see Bran really coming out. I mean, you really feel we know what's going on already because we've read the other chapters, but when you talk about it, that's Bran and Rickon. Bran's back to being a kid. I mean, he no longer feels like he's hopeless. He feels a little bit. I mean, he's talking to Maester Lewin, trying to understand the world around him, but it's sad.
It is. Aziz, we're here. We have Rickon getting dreams. It has to be Blood Raven, right? Giving him these dreams too.
I suppose, or it could be that having a direwolf kind of activates these latent abilities somehow. It just kind of gets them going. I don't know. It's all really hard to figure out how magic works, but it's clear that there's 2 very distinct moments that it becomes clear that Rickon knows something that he shouldn't be able to know through non-supernatural means. First of all, he says he knows what happens because he had the same dream Bran did. Lewin dismisses that, but then he starts to cry before the Raven, right when the Raven lands on the sill there, before the message is even read, and yeah, he knows what's going on, and you realize that things are taking a step forward as far as the mystical elements that are happening, and like James said, I think that comet moment is important too. He's the first one to see it, and of course there's our bloody raven that we were talking about earlier.
Get the bloody
now
raven.
It could just be symbolic that it's bearing a message of Eddard's death. It could just be that simple too, but it could mean more than
dark wings, dark words.
Yep. And George, of course, in general, and especially earlier in the book, but continuing forward even through this point, there's a lot of ways to have something mean more than one thing. You can, that's the mark of good writing, I suppose. You can write a sentence that means 3 different things, 4 different things, and multiple people catch all of those things. That's great.
Without a doubt. Yoke Boy.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I kind of agree with Aziz that it's a kind of precursor to Bran's magic arc, And it is curious about Rickon, and that's something that I believe is just down to individual interpretation. For me, I just don't try and resolve these magical issues so much. I just kind of let them be and accept them as unknown magic.
I hear you. What about the line? I always thought that line that Asha says, "Winter has no kings," when he says, "These are the kings of winter," and she's like, "Winter has no kings." I always thought that line was kind of funny. Her just putting that in there. What does that mean? That winter has no kings? Is she saying?
Well, with her knowledge of up north and perhaps knowledge of what's coming, politics isn't going to mean anything. That's how I would interpret it. Your kings mean nothing. Politics is nothing. You've got supernatural force coming to get you, and it doesn't matter who's sitting in a castle. I mean, the same kind of sentiment is given in kind of Old Nan's Tale and a few other places. So
that's literally what I wrote down. Nice, Yopo.
Nice. So we also got a lot of talk about a lot of the old kings of winter. And we get to talk about a couple of, these Simon Stories and all these things, and then they try to dismiss this Simon Stories. Now, Simon Stories, is he a half-breed? Simon Stories is supposed to be a half-breed White Walker human person? Is that what he's described as in the thing? He has two blue eyes?
Sapphires for eyes, yeah. That's pretty much. Do we know of any examples of blue eyes that aren't associated with the others, like shiny blue eyes like that? It's the same kind of language and writing he uses. The starlight, he uses words like starlight and sapphire and ice blue, things like that. It's the same theme over and over. So yeah, I think there's a good chance that it's referring to some kind of heroic undead, maybe like what Jon will be. I don't know. Maybe something along those lines. A lot of possibilities. Again, magic is impossible to figure out. You just have to throw out ideas and say, that sounds good.
You just got to go with what you got on it, because it could be anything. It's magic, and that's why it's called magic. Anything is possible right there. Don the Kraken Wood is supposed to be the person to take over the thing. And
I am back.
Well,
I am back.
If I can add to what Yokeboy said, what Yokeboy was referencing, the old Nan's thing, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Yokeboy, sorry, was kings froze to death in their castles, same as the shepherds in their huts, because there is no... When the doom comes, there's no more hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that, they're gone. So obviously they have seen a lot already beyond the wall of what's going on with these White Walkers have been doing this for a little while. Obviously with Craster and all that's been going on, but they are very much aware of it, to the point right now where they feel that they have to flee, that whatever has happened has built up to that point where they have to get out of there, and they cannot be a part of staying anywhere close to that right there. And I think, that this Hodor situation, real quick, if we could talk about that. Does anyone have any idea or is there anything that anyone has on Hodor at why this man calls himself and says Hodor? Does anyone have any thoughts on that reason?
Well, apparently, Robert Baratheon hit him over the head with something, and he woke up the next day saying Hodor.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. But go ahead, you guys. That's just a joke. So.
I can't go with that. I'm sorry. If that is the reason, the only way I could see it is if that axe or that hammer better be named Hodor.
Well, I mean, like I brought it up because I knew that you had a problem with it. So
that's such a silly thing to do. It's so silly. I have no idea why the man's name is Hodor. I don't know. I've seen Greek gods. People try to connect to it or whatever. I have no idea what it is. Anybody have anything with Hodor?
You've heard my theory, but I'll just lay it out there. I think that it means. I think he literally is a baby giant. I'm the theory guy. I'm the out there fucking. I'm out of my fucking mind. I know, but he's a. I think if I were to write this, that would be cool to make him a giant baby. He is literally a baby giant, and that Hodor means mother. And Are You My Mother was a book, a pretty popular book when Martin was a kid, and he's just kind of going around going, mother. Mother?
All right, so we do have a question here. Do we trust the direwolves' reactions? And
Ooh,
if
good
so,
question.
are Tyrion and Maester Lewin bad?
Well, there's two ways to. I think they are generally trustworthy, but they also just reflect the mood of
Yes.
like when they Shaggy Dog is wild because Rickon is wild, not the other way around.
Right, and Lady was all Miss Priss because that's what Sansa wanted.
They didn't just magically have the same personalities as they adopted the other way. So yeah, I think that they're trustworthy. Like their reactions, if they don't trust somebody, they think that means something. But sometimes it's just the anger. Like Robb was mad at Tyrion, and Rickon was mad in general at Lewin, or just mad. I don't know. Rickon's just mad.
It's upset all the time, that little boy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's a
Smash.
I want to stomp out the whole Rickon thing debate and whatnot. He's a small child. He's a toddler, okay, that is used to this certain lifestyle with his family, with his brothers and his sisters and his parents, and all of it gets ripped away. And he's so young that you can't really explain to him what's going on. You know, like he doesn't understand it. And so with the emotional connection with Shaggy Dog, Rickon is so angry and confused and apprehensive. Of course his dog is going to be fucking crazy. You know, like you see Shaggy Dog like jumping out of the bushes, like just fucking like foaming at the mouth.
Even in the beginning, Rickon's upset. Even when his family is there and everything else, he's still upset. The dog is still upset. Rickon's still wild. So it wasn't like they left and then he got all upset. He was upset before that, kind of. You know what I mean?
He just got worse. Yeah.
Shaggy Dog's been attacking people for a while, as Lewin said. He's just grabbing people up. Shaggy Dog. He just likes to hunt. So. It could be, but I think Rickon's he's just a wild little bastard. That's it. Well, not bastard, but he's just a wild little kid and stuff. So
and it's very fitting that he even winds up on Skagos in the first place. Like they're gonna look at him like he's a little golden god, just sitting up on there with his wolf and everything.
I'm so with you.
Fits right in.
I think they're gonna love him there. They're like, this is the kind of kid, yeah. If this is what the Starks are like, I follow the Starks. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Without that, Dad, I think it's.
It is my turn. You there, Tony?
Tony's gone. Why don't you go ahead with reading?
I will. We are talking about Bran and the sack of Winterfell with Theon. I want to read from the wiki, and then right here in the middle, I want to ask you guys a little personal question. After Robb becomes King of the North, Bran, as Robb's heir, becomes the Prince of Winterfell and rules the castle in his brother's absence. He befriends Mira and Jojen Reed, children of his father's most trusted friend, Howland Reed. Now, there's also a saying that Mira and Jojen say in unison to Bran, "We swear by ice and fire." And for me, that was is that for the good and the bad. It's basically like wedding vows. For me. So while sleeping, Bran frequently enters Summer's mind, though he thinks he is simply dreaming, and begins to become more bestial. Jojen recognizes Bran's abilities as skin-changing and instructs him on how to use it properly. After learning of Bran's visions, Jojen claims that if Bran goes north beyond the wall, he can find the three-eyed crow from his dreams. Now, also, guys, what we might want to talk about is Jojen actually getting these visions of Bran in the first place. Why? So when Theon Greyjoy captures Winterfell, Bran and Rickon hide in the crypts. To hide the truth of their escape, Theon has 2 other children murdered and skinned by Reek and proclaims them to be Bran and Rickon. And also, to talk about Ramsay Snow, Theon is betrayed by Ramsay Snow, the bastard Bolton, who is not acting out of loyalty to the Starks. Outside of Winterfell, men of House Bolton massacred those loyal to the Starks, burn the castle, and take the surviving women and children to the Dreadfort. Bran and his companions emerge from the crypts to find Winterfell in ruins. The brothers find a mortally wounded Maester Luwin, who advises their traveling party to split. Rickon and Osha set off in the direction of White Harbor. Bran, Hodor, Mira, and Jojen Reed set off north to seek the Three-Eyed Crow. Guys, what do you think it like when Bran is sitting there, being the Lord of Winterfell, and Mira and Jojen walk in, and they give their speech, and they swear by ice and fire. What did that mean to you?
Well, let me read it so that you got the whole thing. They say, "To Winterfell we pledge the faith of Greywater, hearth and harvest, and we yield up to you, my lord. Our swords and spears and arrows are yours to command. Grant mercy to our weak, help to our helpless, and justice to all, and we shall never fail you." And Jojen says, "I swear it by earth and water." And Mira says, "I swear it by bronze and iron." And then they both say, "We swear it by ice and fire."
I think it's a big hint at, some serious backstory between the Starks and the Crannogmen. And it's letting the reader know that there's an ancient connection, with these kind of base, sort of ice and fire, these kind of base vows. And it does sound like a wedding vow to me. So I'm wondering if the origins lie in the Starks and the Marsh King's weddings from yesteryear.
Which Yoke Boy, you have the next part, part 6, and I think a little of it bleeds together. The unison of the Reeds and the Starks, and we get to know, and we'll hear a little bit later of why Ned and Howland are such good friends, with Attorney and whatnot. But we get to play with the idea that there is a long history of these two houses, and even in the Attorney, maybe that's why they got along so good, is because there was some extra knowledge that they knew of their own houses. That's why they connected immediately.
And it could be, in the broader scheme of the story, their connection might be important, because it might have been how the Starks got their warg blood. Because I think, as many people do, that the children of the forest mixed over with humans, and the logical explanation is the Crannogmen were the kind of crossover. So then when the Starks mixed in with the Crannogmen, then that's where the warg blood came from. So it might be, essential to the greater plot.
That would also explain why Jojen has visions too.
Yes.
Well, Ice and Fire is actually also in. I'm trying to find the quote, but I can't find it. Martin used it before he ever wrote Game of Thrones in Fever Dream, the book he wrote, Fever Dream. And I think he thought it was cool and wanted to use it. And A Song of Ice and Fire is a beautiful thing to put it. I think, to a certain extent, here's what's going on. Either Martin is saying that the idea of these things being opposites, ice and fire, earth and water, it's everywhere, or he's saying, and I think this is ultimately what he's getting at, I think that regardless of whether any of us can nail down what it is, Martin's telling a story that is generations and generations long. Houses separating and then coming back together, and even what appear to be different species mixing, whether it be the others or the children of the forest and humans or giants. All of these are mixing and then coming apart and coming back together. And the story he's telling is way old. And ice and fire and earth and water, these are things that never change. No matter where you are, they never change. And they're central, not just to every independent culture, but over time, the connections between them get interlocked. Like, one crazy theory is that Dany's actually ice, and that the reason the fire didn't affect, and I'm not with this, that's not my opinion, but the reason the fire doesn't affect her is because she's icy. Well, we kind of saw something like that in the Hardhome episode. The other walks through the fire, and the fire dissipates because he walks through it. And I think that we're all ultimately ice and fire. We are all ice, and we are all fire, whether we relate to one or the other, or whether we're more closer related to the other. And to me, when they promise that, they're promising that this is the oath that people should take to their leader. I exited it already, but they basically say, as long as you're good to us and you follow justice, we're with you. And I think that ice and fire is kind of like whether we're ice and you're fire, whether you're ice and we're fire, doesn't matter. It says, grant mercy to our weak, help to our helpless, and justice to all, and we shall never fail you.
It sounds like wedding vows to me, like for good or bad, for better, for worse, like I'm on your side. You know, it's vows. Like the Reeds are saying vows to the Starks. You know, and then, you know, the fact that Jojen's getting these visions and everything, his dad's like, yeah, get the fuck out of here. You know, like go take care of business, pretty much. You know, and just to me, it seems like there is way a bigger history between these two people, or these two houses.
Agreed.
Tony, you're muted. Yeah.
All right,
muted.
now I'm not muted anyway. And we have anything in the chat room going on there?
No, everybody is kind of inquiring about a Jojen paste, but I thought that we might want to save that for just a little bit later.
If they want to ask real quick, go around the horn real quick. Does anyone agree? Does anyone think that Jojen is in that paste? Aziz?
I don't think he is. But I'm not very confident in it. I think I could see it being true, but I lean towards no.
You gotta know. Down the Crack and Wit, what do you feel?
I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes. You know, it's like protein. If you want to build some muscles, you gotta eat some meat. Yeah, you gotta eat some protein. So
I'm not. Listen,
he's so scrawny.
Listen, I don't know about what white protein you be taking now. We're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to switch right to James Johnson. James Johnson, do you believe in Jojen paste?
Here's what it says, the part that makes people think it is. Something about the look of it made Bran feel ill. The red veins were only werewood sap, he supposed, but in the torchlight they looked remarkably like blood. He dipped the spoon into the paste and then hesitated. And then there's later parts about Jojen getting sick, but he's sick before he even gets there. I don't think so. I think that, but I like to add to that blood sacrifice is hugely important to all of this. It's true in humankind too. There was just like 8 months ago a little kid that got murdered by indigenous people because they believed he was a witch. And I mean, cannibalism, eating blood, scarification. There's a lot of weird shit that went on that people believe was magical. And we get the old vision that Bran had where somebody's throat gets slit near the werewood and the blood flows into the werewood and Bran can literally taste it. I don't know who's assigned that chapter. But so blood sacrifice is extremely important. I think it's possible that there's blood in there, but I think what's definitely true is that there's werewood in there, and no one eats werewood. So, and that would also partly explain why Bloodraven has the werewoods growing in and out of him, because he's been eating it for so long that he is it. And it's kind of also, to be weird, it's also the kind of story your parents tell you where you shouldn't swallow bubble gum because you'll grow it out of your ears. that kind of thing.
Watermelon seeds.
I have one thing I want to add too that ties into something we talked about before that I think is kind of interesting. We brought up that maybe Bloodraven isn't telling the whole truth. If Jojen Pace's theory is true, this would be a perfect example of Bloodraven not telling the whole truth. He's guiding Bran along, but he conveniently left out that he says this will open your gifts, unlock your gifts, but he just leaves out that also it's Jojen, But so if it is true, that would fit in nicely. But still, I still lean towards no. But that's part of why I see it both ways because it fits pretty well either way you look at it.
I don't believe Jojen Paste. The people, it looks like blood. I think what it is that weirwoods have human blood in. That there's been some kind of blood magic, and that weirwoods are humanized right through the books. They've got human qualities, and it's fantasy. I think that there's human blood in the weirwood sap. That's why it's been described as blood, but it's not. It's not Jojen's. It's just part of how weirwoods are awakened, maybe.
I like that. And not just the faces carved in the tree. The door at the wall, which is my chapter, the door in the wall has eyes that open up, and then it literally talks. I think that's Bloodraven, but same difference. And my mom and I talked in a recent video about the idea that blood sacrifice in a completely non-magical sense is a real thing, because whether you're overthrowing a dictator or you're warring a civil war over whether slavery is real, what does Thomas Jefferson say? The tree of liberty must be refreshed with the blood of patriots and tyrants alike, something like that. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants alike. Same kind of blood for sacrifice too, and if the tree represents all of time and the change throughout time, then.
So couldn't there be blood sacrifices where they open the neck in front of a weirwood, and then the blood goes into the roots or something in this fantasy realm? Is something like that could be going on? That was my thoughts on it.
There's no doubt that is definitely going on. I would have to say I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say yes, I do believe in Jojen Pace. As every one of the subs can see, everybody who is on this panel is divided. Half think it is, half don't think it is. And I think the question that people don't ask themselves is, if it is Jojen Pace, who killed Jojen? I mean, it wasn't Bloodraven that killed him. It had to be one of them children of the forest had to take him out there. I don't think he just died from sickness. So if it is, so he must have got taken out somehow. So I think it may be Leaf or something. These people, you see these bones of these dreamers all over the place. You know what I mean? There's a lot of bones in there. There's a reason something's going on. Bloodraven's up to something bad.
It is creepy in that cave, that is for sure.
Yeah.
So that's what I see about that situation. I believe in Jojen Pace. I don't want.
What about the Little Shop of Horrors? Reference. What if they just stick dead bodies in the mouths of these big ass trees, or spill their blood on the roots? And you feed the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely the way I see it. It's a disgusting act. This is something that these children of the forest are supposed to worship these trees. And to take someone's entrails and hang it in a tree is disgusting. So the fact that is allowed must be something that the first men learned from the children. Yeah. It must be something that they have done in practice. So if these Ewok type creatures, why are they cutting entrails and hanging them in trees and dancing around? So there's something going on here with these.
Well, it says that the children of the forest hunted, with their obsidian blades. So they're not some kind of, nature-friendly vegan types. They hunted,
And look at their teeth. Their teeth are all sharp. They're camouflaged. They got slit, predator eyes.
3 claws.
Shit. But I don't know if anybody here's seen the video. To me, they're lizards. They're made to look like cats and like a bunch of different animals, because that's what the Bran sees in them. They've got dappled skin like does. They've got pointed ears, and then their cat eyes. But if you look up a picture of a fucking lizard, lizards have slit eyes, they have 3 toes, they have dappled or colored skin, and they look different colored depending on their species. They've got pointy fucking teeth. These are lizards. These are lizard people, which is a fantasy thing. I mean, most fantasy games have lizard people in them.
Yeah,
All
no,
right, so-
they're definitely lizards. They're definitely evil little lizards. I wish you with that.
I don't know about the evil.
Question time. Question time. Plexi Bertrand. Jojen gives the best descriptions of the Green Dreamers to Bran in the Godswoods includes green eyes and other attributes. This does describe the Ghost of High Heart. Do you think the Ghost of High Heart may be a Crannogman and possibly a Reed?
I'll take it real quick. I think the Ghost of High Heart is a half-breed Children of the Forest. I don't know about Kranich Man, but I definitely think it's a Children of the Forest. I'm going to go with that for my statement.
Well,
I'm going to follow up Tony and just agree that I think she's a direct, like her parents were one Child of the Forest and one human, and she is the result. She's a dwarf. She doesn't have all the features of a Child of the Forest. She's too weird to be a human. She's in between, I think.
I totally agree. Totally, 100% agree. I think Yokeboy said it the way I would. It's just her characteristics are too much like a child, but not enough, and too human, but clearly not. Both ways. It's hard to have. That may not be the precise conclusion that it's an exact child and human direct link from one generation back, but something along those lines, I would have to say, yeah.
And extremely prolific on top of it, and prophetic.
Yeah. She may be the most accurate of the many characters who seem to have prophetic powers.
Right, and after Lemon Cloak's own heart.
Yeah, which is hugely important.
Yeah. He's just a desirable dude, apparently.
Whoever wins in the end is going to have Lem on their side. I can call it in now.
James, how do you feel about that?
I half-breed to some extent, and I think that is actually played on in the TV show where they go to the what's her name? Maggie the Frog. Maggie the Frog. Frog's a fucking amphibian reptile situation. It's in the TV show I don't remember. Cersei says something to her. She says you have no idea what I am. And this whole prophecy situation comes from. I mean, with the exception, all the prophecy situations either seem to be genetic or magic. With Melisandre, we get this magical sort of situation, but with the Green Seers or the Ghost of High Heart, I get a genetic perspective from that. And in my opinion, Bloodraven is not a Green Seer, not a warg. He's interested in magic and was manipulated in the situation. That's the reason why his skin, he needed to be an albino and with red eyes, because that makes him weird. And we think that that's part of the reason. But sometimes it's not. Just like Tyrion's a dwarf, that doesn't make him a Children of the Forest.
Yes, you are. I will ask this question to Yokeboy. Yokeboy, now I forgot the question, I think. I did, James. You threw me off with that last situation that you said. I had a question, too, I was going to ask you. I'll come back to it. I'll figure it out in a second. Oh, wait a second. Here it is. Yokeboy, we got Bran here, right? And Bran is set up from the beginning when we see Bran as probably our hero, the guy who's the warg, he's the Green Seer, he's this, that. But we constantly see Bran break what we learn later on as code of the Green Seers.
Yes.
We see him taking over the people. We see him doing things that you're not supposed eating the flesh of men while doing everything you could do that is supposedly wrong. So is Bran really this great hero that we set out to be, or is Bran just in the middle?
Well, Bloodraven tells him to get ready to kind of embrace the darkness, doesn't he? So I don't know, like you're saying choose one or the other, but again, I'd go in the middle and say, why can't he be a bit of both? If he is going to be a hero, do you think there's a hero in this story that's going to, come away as a clean person that's never got their hands dirty? I think there'll be a few heroes in the story, but I think that there'll also be size to them. If Jon Snow is a hero, I think he's going to do a few shitty things to get what he wants and to get the power he wants if he's going to fight the others. I think with Bran it will be the same. I think he'll be a kind of soiled hero. I think that's George's concept of a hero.
Do you think that him eating the flesh of man and all that is just part of him develop himself as a better person?
I think there's a message in there that he's doing bad things. I mean, it was spelled out by Hagen. Don't do these things if you're a warg. And as you pointed out, he's done half of those things already. And taking over Hodor is really a bad sin. Although it's a little kid and you kind of think it's joking around, if you really think about what he's doing, it's one of the most terrible acts you can do in the whole series.
It is. It definitely is. And we've seen that when the old man tells the story of the Long Night, and she says that the people of the children are fighting, and everyone's fighting at this time. That people are, they were when the first men that took control, not the Long Night, when the first men were fighting the children of the forest, the children of the forest took possession of animals, creatures, and other things while they were fighting men. So they had taken the children of the forest, had taken control of people to fight against men back then. So, James, do you think, I've heard this one thing out there, do you think that it's possible that Bran will rape Mira in the body of Hodor?
Hell fucking no.
What the fuck?
What?
What the fuck?
Let me tell you something. People have come up to me.
But no, now, you said rape. It's possible that Mira's into some kinky shit.
Now, listen,
And
hey.
Hodor is hung like a horse.
Yeah.
So that's not out of the question. But rape, no, out of the question.
Yeah, people have asked me. They come to me and said, Don, do you think that this is possible, that Bran's going to do this? And, we see him sneaking around inside of Hodor's body all the time. He wants her.
Yeah, sneaky little bastard, man.
Hodor.
Well, you do bring up something interesting. That does bring something interesting, though, into it. The fact that Bran is a paraplegic, we don't know whether he has an operable penis or not. He doesn't necessarily need that to have sexual satisfaction. Ultimately, the sexual satisfaction that you get through contact with a penis can be taken over by other parts of the body once the part of the brain that normally handles those stimulations from that area, because there's parts of your brain that are connected to specific parts. And there's a homunculus, which is a creature that represents how much of your brain's perception is based on different parts of your body. So you got big hands and big eyes, small, whatever. So we don't know whether Bran's penis works, but he can get sexual satisfaction despite that in his own body, ultimately. And so I think that's where whatever you're talking about, I think that's where that's coming from. The idea that if he doesn't have a penis, would he fuck her with something else? And I think we get Varamir chapter talking about him in his wolves having sex with other wolves. I think, but
Yes,
Bran is never gonna rape anybody.
When you're in that tree long enough, you don't know.
Well, honestly, I mean, to that extent, he
Put
can.
him in that tree for 10 years. Let's talk about it then. When he's stuck in that tree for 10 years, then we'll see.
And we're basically talking about prison now. But I mean, if you're looking through the werewoods, then you can at least watch other people fuck.
Yeah. Bloodraven did. He said he watched them all when they were born, so I'm sure he watched them when they were conceived.
Yeah, I'm surprised that wasn't in Bran's chapter. I watched you since you were young. Oh my god, that's fucking creepy. Holy shit, I masturbated last week. Were you there during that? Yeah.
I'm sure he was. Without doubt. So
You're a creepy old fuck, dude.
No, it's like
Bloodraven.
Mira would be like, "Hey, Bran, I just noticed that you were like warged out for like 2 hours. What have you been doing?" It's like, well, I chased down this girl, and then in a wolf, I just raped her. You know, like, holy shit, it's like, Bran, chill out, dude. Bran, chill out, man. Like, I don't see that happening. Like, I don't think Bran, well, maybe Summer might have sex with a dog, you know, but I don't think that Bran is gonna go, especially warg into Hodor and then have sex with Mira. Nah, man, that's too far. That's too far. Too much for me, man.
So
Dude.
what's next?
I think we're on to Yoke Boy. Yoke Boy's up? Is he up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about the Night of the Laughing Tree, which is, of great interest to the RLJ theory and a few other theories too. The Night of the Laughing Tree is a tale told to Bran by Mira when they're at the Nightfort. It seems to be pretty well known in Westeros, having been featured in the World Book. Yet the reads are surprised that Bran has never heard of it. So it's quite curious that Ned must have made sure that the story was never told in Winterfell. And in the tale, Mira never mentions anybody by name. It's all sigils and nicknames. The story is about a crannogman who decided to travel in the year of the false spring and went to the Isle of Faces, one of the only times the Isle is ever mentioned in the main series. The crannogman seems to be Howland Reed. After the Isle of Faces, he journeyed to Harrenhal, where there was a tourney taking place, and it was here that 3 squires bullied him, besmirching his honour and mocking him as a frog-eater. There was then a roar from a she-wolf, who we can guess was Lyanna Stark, as she scattered the 3 squires with a tourney sword. Later that night at the feast, they identified the knights the squires were serving as the Porcupine Knight, which is House Blount, the Pitchfork Knight, which is House Hague, which is a Frey vassal house, and a Knight of the Two Towers, which is House Frey. And the crannogman was encouraged to enter the tourney lists, the jousting, and defend his honour against the knights of those 3 unruly squires. The pup in the story, fitting to Benjen Stark, offers to find him some armour and a horse. The crannogman goes to sleep with a heavy heart, knowing that he doesn't have the horse riding skills and abilities or the stature to do well in the jousting, and he fears further humiliation. However, the next day in the lists, a mystery knight appears with a crudely painted weird wood sigil on the shield and is called the Knight of the Laughing Tree. The Knight of the Laughing Tree jousts and beats the 3 knights whose squires bullied the crannogman, afterwards demanding that the squires be taught honour, and speaks in a booming voice under a helm. The mystery knight then disappears, causing the Mad King to be paranoid, and he sends his son Rhaegar off to find the Knight of the Laughing Tree. The knight is never found, except for a shield hanging in a tree, and later Rhaegar wins that tourney. Bran says the mystery knight should have won and crowned the Wolf Maid Queen of Love and Beauty. This might indicate that Bran thinks that the Knight of the Laughing Tree was Howland, and Mira replies she was Queen of Love and Beauty, but that's a sadder story. So that is the tale of the Knight of the Laughing Tree. The consensus in the fandom is that it is in fact Lyanna Stark, despite being referred to as a he all the way through that story. Some people object because of the booming voice. And the counter to that is that it was under a helm and she was making a voice lower and it resonated. And, a lot of people say, well, she can't have won the she can't have beaten knights, a young girl, I think she was 14. And it is mentioned that she was like a centaur. She was a really promising horse rider. And in this fantasy world where Barristan the Bold entered the lists aged 10, it's perhaps not beyond imagination that could have been Lyanna. So what do you think, guys?
it pretty much is the consensus in the chat room for this one to be. Do you have a personal preference of who you think the Knight of the Laughing Tree may be?
I don't think that it's any question that it's Lyanna Stark, and I think anyone putting forth that it's anybody else, I don't know what you've read. I think it has to be Lyanna Stark in order for the book to work. I don't think it works if it's somebody else. She needs to be there in that spot right there. So I don't know how it could be anybody else.
I also think it's very fitting because it just kind of puts a big staple into how badass Lyanna Stark was. Like she they always talk about her and a horse were one person she could ride. She was she was a wolf. She had wolf blood. And if everybody wants to go down the Jon Snow route, it's like, hey, that was his mom. She was a badass. So I think it's very fitting, and I do agree with the Lyanna Stark. So
I definitely do as well. I think that to build on what you said a little, Don, there was all this talk about what Lyanna being a great horseman and how being a great horseman is crucial to being a good jouster. There's just if she's not the Knight of the Laughing Tree, then what is that for? Why did that get mentioned at all? Why is the fact that she's good at riding mentioned several times? It's all, I mean, it doesn't have to be an important detail, but it seems like all of a sudden just a made-up, unimportant background detail that's repeated a couple times for no reason, which doesn't seem likely. It seems like it matters that those things were mentioned. So, yeah, Lyanna.
James?
I mean, I think we're all in consensus that it's Lyanna, but and Lyanna in the horse situation, I just read the chapter again with Jon for this meeting where Jon escapes the wildlings below the wall as he's being asked to kill the guy with the makes a fire, and Jon escapes by getting on a horse, but he grabs the horse's mane and like leaps up on the horse, and later on he's like, how the fuck did I do that? That doesn't make any sense. So that one point, the Lyanna. I love that I don't know if you meant to do it this way, but the way you said it was, and it may be in the chapter this way. I haven't read it in a while, but that Rhaegar won the tournament. Mira says it should have been the Knight of the Laughing Tree, and then Rhaegar gives the flower to Lyanna. Like, you probably would have won this. So, I also think Rhaegar, even though I think Rhaegar was probably Rhaegar should not have won that. And I don't know whether it's because Robert, the same way that Ned tells Robert, they're going to let you win, or whether it's because he needed to win in order to give her the rose and worked it out with other people. I don't know how it ended up happening, but he should not have won that.
Well, Jorah shouldn't have won the jousting when he won Lyness Hightower, but it was for the favour of a woman, wasn't it? And he jousted out of his skin. So I for a woman is the same thing happening here.
Maybe so.
Okay. So you know what? This is a good question that I don't know the answer to from Marie Hill. How did Rhaegar meet Lyanna to kidnap her? Was it just like, oh, hey, you're so hot, let me win this tournament and
I think
steal her out?
I think it's got to come to this. Now, do you believe that Rhaegar found Lyanna in the armor that night?
Yeah.
And she gave up her shield, and to me that's like representation of her giving away whatever it was that she kept herself guarded for.
We're all nodding.
Nice, James, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Everyone's nodding like, yep.
So him crowning Lyanna the Queen of Love and Beauty could have been, rather than at that point, a romantic gesture, although it could have been as well. It could have been a gesture like, I know what you did. I know what you did, and I'm going to honor you in front of everyone. Even though no one else knows what you did, I'm going to honor you because what you did was amazing. You stood up for a Cranagban.
Yeah, I don't think it's not just about him being in. It's not just about him being in love or having fallen. I mean, that happened, I think, but it's not just about that.
Yeah,
Because,
it could.
you know.
It could straight. I think there's several options, but I think we just laid them out. Number one, I'm in love with you, and I need you to know it. Number two, I want you to know how proud I am that you are, how honorable it is that you would try to protect somebody and go into a tournament for it. And number three, arguably, you would have won this whole thing had you been allowed to stay in. And I'm not sure. I was thinking maybe he convinced her not to stay involved, but I don't think she would have involved because she already got what she wanted out of it, which was the squires to be punished.
I got another. Was Varys right? Was Rhaegar set this tournament up to take the crown from his father? Was that the purpose of this tournament? Around the horn. Let's start with James Johnston.
I'm not aware that Varys said that. Talk to me about that.
The king went to this tournament, all right? The king went there. It's the first time the king had left the tournament, the castle, in a very long time, due to the fact that he thought that Varys told him that Rhaegar was conspiring against him, and he was getting the lords together for a coup, and that's why he went, so nobody would speak in front of him.
Yeah, there was tournaments, as we've seen, a lot of times are an excuse for people to gather and talk about whatever they want to talk about, things they don't normally get a chance to do, because, let's be honest, these guys live really far apart, and if you're going to plot, if you're going to do secret plotting, you don't send ravens to do that. You can't. That's just too dangerous. So you got to find a way to meet, and tournaments are a great cover for that. The best example of that's the Mystery Night. That's like a perfect example right there. Mm-hmm. And in this case, what happens is Lord Went doesn't. It doesn't add up that he's throwing this tournament. He can't afford it. Where is this money coming from? And that's part of the, part of the evidence that somebody else was behind it. And Rhaegar, we know that Rhaegar says to Jaime right before he rides off the trident, I should have done something sooner. I should have taken action. I should, but we'll do things when I get back. When this war's over, we'll take care of this. My father's a problem, but we'll take care of that. He didn't say I'm gonna overthrow him, but what else could he mean? So yeah, I mean, it's pretty strong, I think.
So you're agreeing Varys was right. He's going with that Rhaegar was up to something at this tournament.
Yeah, I think it's pretty strong, and I think it's even possible that Tywin may have been involved a little bit as well. That's more of getting into the crackpot. Tywin wasn't there, but if we're talking about some secret benefactor, that's a big question that's asked: is where's the money? This tournament had huge prizes, and it's expensive. You got to feed all these people, all the lords of the realm. This is a huge expense. Where did that money come from? They say, well, Rhaegar paid for it, but even Rhaegar didn't necessarily have that kind of wealth. I mean, Dragonstone, he's Prince of Dragonstone. That's not exactly a place that generates a lot of money. It's a hard to take fortress, but it's not a money maker.
Indeed. So. Oh, yo, boy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I don't have anything to add, but I think that it's possible. And when you pair it to Rhaegar's line about wanting to make changes, which comes later on before he's killed, then the pieces are all there. If it turned out that was the case, you can see that George has laid out the subtle clues here and there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he was up to something. I think he was scheming on getting his dad out of there at that particular time.
I did not know that particular tournament, I wasn't connecting it to that particular tournament, but in reference to Rhaegar and his dad, I definitely think that that's where Rhaegar was at, that he was. It's not that he knew his dad was causing issues in the kingdom, and I don't want to go so far as to say that he didn't not love his dad, he didn't hate his dad, but he knew that his dad was not doing what was best for the realm and was arguably causing insurrection. And ironically, even if that was his plan, when Rhaegar chose to instead make his immediate plan to take Lyanna, or to abscond with Lyanna, he created the situation where his father, Aerys, finally stepped over the line. We need to take care of my dad because he is one skip away from jumping off the cliff, and we need to do that soon. And then he sees this beautiful girl and says, we're going to do that about my dad, but not quite yet. Let me do this first. And as a result, all those people show up, and we end up with them being killed, burning, and so I mean, Rhaegar is arguably...
That obviously rather arguably was the big problem, because if Rhaegar's going to win these people to his side, he needs the Great Lords to either mostly or entirely be behind him to unseat his father. Then he goes and pisses off, at least two of them, the Starks and the Baratheons. And that's why something
actually,
there's something else going on that we're not aware of yet. And
to add to that, in order for Rhaegar to have done that at this tournament, at any tournament, he would need the people in charge, all the lords, to be in on it, or at least the ones he could trust to be in on it, so that it could be one fell swoop. Listen, Dad, I love you, but we're locking you in the tower. But if that's true, they could not have told many people. You would want to keep that in a small group, just the people who have the power, which would be the lords. So now Ned doesn't know because he's a kid. Robert doesn't know because he's a kid, and the person who knows is the dad, who shows up and gets burned, and he can't tell the king this. So he shows up and is like, Can I just have my son back? I mean, that's all I fucking want. Just give me my son back. And then he ends up burned. And now you got Ned and Robert, who had no clue that that the prince was already planning on getting rid of them. I like that.
Yeah.
And there's also, as a side note, Aerys, I think, went crazy because Roose Bolton fucked with his head. I don't know if there's that, but he disappeared Aerys was captured for a while, and Tywin did not go rescue him for a year, and we don't know what happened with Aerys. There's nothing in the books about Aerys being insane or cruel before he was taken away. It's when he comes back that he starts being insane and liking torture and hurting his wife. Sorry, Aziz.
I was going to say that the other interesting connection between Rhaegar and Lord Went, who was Lord of Harrenhal during the tournament, is that one of Rhaegar's best friends was Oswell Went, who was one of the three Kingsguard at the Tower of Joy. And so if you think who's buddy with who, well, we're told in the World of Ice and Fire that it was Oswell went to talk to Walter, and then when he comes back, this tournament idea came around, and so the idea was that Rhaegar told Oswell to talk to his brother, blah blah blah. That's where so it all fits together pretty nicely.
Yeah, if Oswell did do that, then he has no right haunting Jaime in these dreams, saying that he disrespected his vows when this guy went behind his king's back to seat Rhaegar on the throne. Yeah. So, that's kind of contradictory for him himself and stuff. But this is not the first time at that, they met the night before, Rhaegar and Lyanna, right? Rhaegar sang a song.
Yes.
And Lyanna cried at that. So, who knows that during that night, if they had already had a plan, they have already been together a couple of times, it's up and that's the way it went down. It could have went down like that. It may not have been. It had to be something at that time to make Rhaegar, I think, give her that crown right at that particular time. That night when he's seen her crying for a song.
I don't necessarily have a question here. It's more of a statement, but it is from your girl T-Baby. She said, "It is still disrespectful to claim love and beauty to somebody else." Which I agree.
Yeah. Rhaegar screwed up any way you look at it.
Yeah.
He may have had some very good thoughts in mind, but that was not the way to go about it.
You can't do it. Your wife's right there.
Yeah.
There's no way around that being. Yeah, there's just no way around that.
That's pretty damn disrespectful.
Yeah.
And we on to the next part, I think. Who is next up?
Is James over here, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. Let's see. The first one is Bran. All right, this is the one in the TV show where they are they go up to the top of the tower, and then Jon's fighting outside. So they get to this tower surrounded by a lake on an island, and they're not on the island, they're looking at it. They are hunting. Myrrh's hunting, and Myrrh ends up, or Summer ends up running off for to chase deer. Then they talk about the gift and the new gift. Brandon's gift, the regular gift. Brandon the Builder gave all the land south of the wall to the Black Brothers to a distance of 25 leagues for their sustenance and support. Some say it was some other Brandon, not the Builder, but it's still called Brandon's gift, so we don't really know whose it was. There also is the new gift, which was given by good Queen Alysanne about 200 years ago, and she actually stayed in this tower, which is why the tower's top's golden. I'm trying to speed it up like you did, Tony, but I'm not quite as good at doing that. It was a peaceful spot, still and tranquil and lovely to behold, but Bran thought there was something sad about an empty inn, and Hodor seemed to feel it too. So this is the first inklings you're getting of Bran and Hodor having a connection. It doesn't say that Hodor seemed to feel it too. Well, the only way you do that is from the facial expressions or to feel within there. And the reason why there's nobody at this town is because we're starting to get the fact that the wildlings come over the wall and ransack the cities and end up, nobody wants to live there, so they go to the Umbers, or they go even further down. Jojen has a vision that tells them they need to shelter there, and it describes his vision as music only he could hear, which I really liked, and also there's the whole idea of songs. Again, Brian says we should go out to the Holdfast, which is the castle in the middle of the lake, and Hodor said Hodor. Maybe he agreed. Again, the same idea. There's a causeway, which is underneath the water, in between the land and the lake. There's a causeway. So it's underneath the water, but you can walk across it. And Bran knows this because he's been taught it when he was a little kid. And it actually zigzags halfway through it, so that you couldn't just walk straight and get there, and that ends up fucking some people up later. But I love the idea of they're basically walking on water, and that's mentioned later by Jon, but cut off before he gets to finish. So, like I said, it goes straight and it goes a little left, and then it ends up there. They fall twice, or almost fall twice. Hodor's carrying Bran, and he's up to his hips, and the kids are up to their chests at one point, and he slips twice, but he didn't slip a third time. It says, the second time scared Bran badly. If Hodor fell into the lake with him in his basket, he could well drown, especially if the huge stable boy, Hodor, panicked and forgot that Bran was there. So they get to this tower, and there's a stairway going up on their left and a stairway going down on their right, but there's a metal grate blocking both, because the whole idea is there's a secret way to get to the castle, but you can get shot by arrows the whole way, and even if you get to the castle, there's gates on both sides and what they call a murder hole above, so people can drop shit down on you. Hodor tries to break both of them, but can't, so eventually Bran looks up and does this to the murder hole, and the whole fucking roof falls down on them. The grate and all the stuff, and this is one of the inklings we get that Bran's got a crush on Mira, which she keeps calling him my prince, which Jojen does too. But to her, every time I hear that, knowing now that he actually loves her to some extent, which he says later, I hear that's the irony is she's protecting him. In the classic stories, it's always the prince that saves the girl. It's her that's protecting him, but she still calls him my prince. She says, "Look at that, my prince. You're stronger than Hodor." Bran blushed. So when they're at the top of the tower, Mira notes that I feel almost a giant standing high above the world. They have a discussion about they hope they could see the wall from there, but they can't, and Bran thinks it was stupid to even think of that. How are we going to get past the wall to find the three-eyed crow? They talk about abandoned castles, but they don't really decide on one. And Bran says they're called ghost castles, all the ones that are abandoned. That's what old Nan called them. And Bran named them all last time he saw Benjen. He named them from the east, and then he named them from the west, all the way across. And Benjen said, You know them better than I do, Bran. Perhaps you should be first ranger. I'll stay here in your place." I thought that was cool. Bad things might... Oh, and there's several times in these chapters that I read where Bran remembers or thinks we shouldn't unseal the doorways because then something might come through, which I think is important for the wall coming down. So you see the Iron Man, the Bastard Bolt. They talk about the reason that they can't let anybody know they're there. It's because they can't let the Iron Man or the Bastard of Bolton figure out that they're still alive or out in the world. But Bran's trying to convince them we could ask the Night's Watch, and they're saying, but it would only take one traitor for all of this to be for nothing. And Bran's like, but my father was a friend of the Night's Watch, and my uncle is First Ranger. He might know where the Three-Eyed Crow lives. And John's at Castle Black too. Bran had been hoping to see Jon again and their uncle too. The last Black brothers to visit Winterfell said that Benjen Stark had vanished on a ranging, but surely he would have made his way back by now. This is all set up, in my opinion, for when Coldhands comes for us to think, that's fucking Benjen. That's where Benjen's been. That's Benjen. Which you get that several times. Old Man and Benjen come up in every single chapter I'm about to do, over and over and over again. And then there's somebody, they notice somebody, Bran thinks it might be Summer, but it's a man on a horse. He stops, and Hodor covers his eyes, but he's looking the wrong way. He's not looking at the guy. So this is the first inkling that he's freaking out about the storm. So they're worried. The guy lights a fire. They try to be real quiet. Bran says, I wish we could have a fire. Fire means smoke, Jojen says. Smoke from the tower could be seen a long way off. And then they talk. They had half a duck. The only food they have right now is half a duck, and they eat it. Bran and Mira shared the breast. That's literally what it says. That's kind of a heart, maybe. Shared the breast. When Jojen ate the thigh. I don't know what that means. Bran. It says it was Bran's turn to tell a story, so he told them about another Brandon Stark, the one called Brandon the Shipwright, who had sailed off beyond the Sunset Sea. So it starts to get dark. The storm rolls in. Jojen had that vision because a storm was rolling in earlier. So they're in the tower, and a storm starts rolling in. Hodor's growing restless and walks a while around. Bran counts between the lightning and the thunder. I think that's really interesting because that's the scientific thing. Whether they know it or not, they're actually... to do that is an understanding that light is faster than sound. I don't know whether they really understand it, but to count those, and I mean it's a relatively... to count those and know that it means how close it is, I don't know how early we would have known that. Maybe really, really fucking early and not understood it, but that's something. So Hodor's freaking the fuck out, and he even grabs his sword at some point, but Mira takes it back from him. Then they noticed more men, and the storm's getting more and more strong. They're freaking out, and it's written in such a way for us to think they're freaking out. Why would they come here, Mira says, and Jojen's like, for fucking shelter? Unless the storm lets up, this is the only place they could go. And Hodor's freaking the fuck out. And then... Be quiet, Bran said in a shrill, scared voice, reaching up uselessly for Hodor's leg as he crashed past. Reaching. Hodor staggered and closed his mouth. He shook his head slowly from side to side, sank back to the floor, and sat cross-legged. When the thunder boomed, he scarcely seemed to hear it. The four of them sat in the dark tower, scarce daring to breathe. Bran, what did you do? Mira whispered. Nothing, Bran shook his head. I don't know. But he did. I reached for him, the way I reached for Summer. He had been Hodor for half a heartbeat. It scared him. And then they know that somebody was pointing. It looks like one of the men were pointing at the tower. Bran's trying to convince himself to not be afraid. Summer would not be afraid. It also says... Nico just joined us. It also says that they don't know who these men are. They could be Umbers, Knots, Norries, or Flints. The majority of those are people that are named in the Night's King story in the next chapter. They're scared that they'll come. I love this. They are feeding the fire the first man started. The fact that first men are actually a thing. They are feeding the fire the first men started. Hodor rocked back and forth, humming. Bran could feel Summer's fear. He closed two eyes and opened a third, and his boy's skin slipped off him like a cloak as he left the tower behind. And then he's in the dog, and he sees men under the trees, and he can smell their fear. But so he's in Summer, and Summer's hiding, and that's where the chapter ends. And the next chapter is Jon, and that's a short one. I might just cut straight to the chase on that one. I don't. But anything y'all want to talk to about that one? I don't really have any. Go ahead.
I don't know. That's really not a lot to say to me.
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to say hello to Nicolina.
Yes.
Hey, what's up, Nico?
Yes.
Good
So
morning.
How's it going?
Oh my god, I just woke up. I just woke up.
I felt bad for Yoke Boy being up so late over there. I had to get someone else up with him at the same time that had suffered too, and I knew that you would do it. So I'm very happy to have you with us. We are almost done with this chapter.
Sorry, guys.
It's quite alright.
I was asleep. I just woke up and I saw that you were calling me. So, oh.
Oh no, I feel bad. I'm sorry. So does anybody have anything to say about anything that James had just read there? I mean, basically we're getting Bran here. Is this the first time he's walking Hodor? Or going inside of Hodor? Anyone have anything to say about that, or are we?
Copacetic.
Yeah.
It's good to say. It's just pretty much flat out. That part is pretty much says itself. I think we could probably just move right to the next spot. It's just late over there. I feel bad for Yoke Boy. I do. I feel terrible for that.
All right.
It's all right.
So the next one's the Jon chapter where Jon is with Ygritte with all the wildlings beneath the wall. They talk about, and should I go into the detail, or should I skip to the part where it had to deal with Bran?
Just Bran. We're going with Bran.
The short and sweet of it is that Jon is asked, he must die, Steer the Magnar said. Do it, Crow. Jon's forced to kill this guy, and Jon just cannot fucking bring himself to do it. And he says, where has he said, do it, Snow, you must. An old man sitting by a fire? Orell was sitting by a fire too. You killed him quick enough. The look she gave him then was hard. You meant to kill me too till you saw I was a woman. Sorry, fellas. And I was asleep. That was different. You were soldiers, sentries, and you crows didn't want to be seen, no more than we do now. It's just the same. Kill him. He turned his back on the man. No. The Magnar moved closer, tall, cold, and dangerous. So they're about to kill Jon, and death leapt down amongst them. The lightning flash left Jon night-blind, but he glimpsed the hurtling shadow half a heartbeat before he heard the shriek. So one by one, I gotta read it because it's fucking cool. The first Thin died as the old man had, blood gushing from his torn throat. Ygritte slit the guy's throat, by the way. Then the light was gone and the shape was spinning away, snarling, and another man went down in the dark. There were curses, shouts, howls of pain. John saw Big Boyle stumble backward and knock down 3 men behind him. Ghost, he thought for one mad instant. Ghost left the wall? Then the lightning turned the night to day, and he saw the wolf standing on Dell's chest, blood running black from his jaws. Gray. He's gray. Darkness descended with a thunderclap. The Thins were jabbing with their spears as the wolf darted between them. The old man's mare reared, maddened by the smell of slaughter, and lashed out with her hooves. Longclaw was still in his hand. All at once, Jon knew he would never get a better chance. So Jon basically starts slashing and fucking running for the horse. One of the Thins has got the horse. Jon smacks the Thin's hand off and immediately the horse starts running, and Jon's got a sword in one hand and he grabs the fucking horse's mane by his other hand and lifts himself up on the horse as the horse is running by. And later on when he comes to near the lake, he's trying to go over what the fuck happened. He's like, that doesn't make any sense. I shouldn't have been able to do that, but he did, which is tying into Lyanna. It was too large to be a common wolf. A direwolf then it had to be. He had never seen an animal move so fast, like a gray wind, he thinks to himself. Could Robb have returned to the north? I'll reread that. How did I ever mount her before without saddle or stirrups and a sword in one hand? That was another question he could not answer. Also, it doesn't really say in here that it was Ygritte that shot him. I guess we get that information later. That's all for that one. Anybody want to add to that one?
As I said before, anybody have anything to say about anything that James had just read about Bran, warging Hodor, warging the animals, and the fight helping Jon escape that situation? Oh, we all.
I like the puzzle of the jumping up on the horse is really interesting. I like that you tied that to Lyanna earlier. I had never made that connection. That's pretty cool. But it does seem like a less in general, this chapter is less analytical and more action. You know?
Yeah.
There's a lot of payoff, but there's less to say about it. You're just like, wow, that happened. Whoa, John, damn.
It's really straightforward. Not a lot of mystery going on there. It's pretty straightforward from that right there. Until basically we get to the Coldhands situation and stuff like that. You can basically talk about Coldhands right now.
No, it's the next chapter. Next 2 chapters.
Next 2 chapters? Next 2 chapters?
Not the one next one, but the one after him. All right, so the next chapter, unless anybody has something to add, because I want to knock these the fuck out. All right, so this one is more deep. We'll have more to talk to about on this one.
James.
So in this one, they are showing up at the Nightfort. They're at the Nightfort and they're talking about it. The very first part of that, Mira says, "It is only another empty castle," and Bran thinks to himself, "No, it is the Nightfort, and this is the end of the world." I really like that, because that's what's going on in these books. Apparently, Bran had a dream. In between this, the Red Wedding happens, and Bran saw it through Summer. It's a dream Summer had. He says, in the mountains, all he could think of was reaching the wall and finding the three-eyed crow, but now that they were here, he was filled with fears. The dream he'd had, the dream Summer had had. No, he thinks to himself, I mustn't think about that dream. He had not even told the Reeds, though Mira at least seemed to sense that something was wrong. If he never talked of it, maybe he could forget he ever dreamed it, and then it wouldn't have happened, and Robb and Greywind would still be ... So he knows the Red Wedding happened because he saw it in Summer's dream, and we know from a Jon chapter in the second book that they can see in their wolves can see to the other wolves, and those wolves, depending on who the owner is, they can see into the owner. That's how Jon and Bran have a green dream between each other in the second book. All right. So this one's deep because it talks about a bunch of the shit that happened. These are all the legends that have to do with the Nightfort. Bran wasn't so certain. The Nightfort had figured in some of Old Nan's scariest stories. It was, by the way, the Night's King is never called the Night's King. Martin goes out of his way to never put the word "the" in front of it. It's just Night's King. It was here that Night's King had reigned, before his name was wiped from the memory of man. This was where the rat cook had served the Andel King his prince and bacon pie, where the 79 sentinels stood their watch, where brave young Danny Flint had been raped and murdered. This was the castle where King Sherrit had called down his curse on the Andals of old, where the prentice boys had faced the thing that came in the night, where blind Simeon Star Eyes had seen the hellhounds fighting. Mad Axe had once walked these yards and climbed these towers, butchering his brothers in the dark. All that had happened hundreds and thousands of years ago, to be sure, and some maybe never happened at all. Maester Luwin always said that Old Nan's stories shouldn't be swallowed whole, but once his uncle came to see Father, and Bran asked about the Nightfort, Benjen Stark never said the tales were true, but he never said they weren't. He only shrugged and said, "We left the Nightfort 200 years ago," as if that was an answer. All right. So this whole chapter is him recounting fears that he has. He thinks about the Night's Cook. He hears some sounds. He thinks it's the Night's Cook's he sees rats. He thinks it's the Night's Cook's children running from their father. Even Summer is not at ease there. Bran slipped inside his skin just for an instant to get the smell of the place. He didn't like that either. They're basically trapped. They have no way through. And this is a dense chapter, so there might be more in here than there were in the other ones. Bran had told them there wasn't going to be a way through, but Jojen Reed had insisted on them going there. So Jojen Reed is getting visions that specifically tell him to go to the Nightfort, where Coldhands, whoever sends him, and Sam come through. So Jojen had a green dream, he said, and his green dreams didn't lie. And then Bran thinks to himself, they don't open any gates either. And then Bran recounts what happened to Summer when he was fighting to save Jon. Summer got shot with an arrow in the leg. Bran had reached out for Summer time and time again, but the pain he found drove him back, the way a red-hot kettle makes you pull your hand back even when you mean to grab it. This is the same thing that happens in the Varamir chapter when he recounts what happened to him on the wall when he's using Orell's eagle. He is forced out of Orell's eagle because of sheer searing pain, but there's no arrow, so he doesn't know what caused the pain. And later, Bran cannot put himself into Hodor because of the pain he feels, I think. Alright, so there's no werewoods. He notes that there's no werewoods on the stony island in the lake, yet somehow the old gods must have heard. So it's Martin's implying something's been listening to them. Late that afternoon, Summer returned from wherever he'd been hiding, dragging his back leg. He ate parts of the bodies in the inn, so Summer is eating the people that he killed, and driving off the crows, and then swam out to the island. And then Mira tried to fix his leg. I did not remember this, and it's really fucking weird. It's odd to think about. It's like Tyrion doing the backflip in the first book off the roof or the thing. Mira climbs the wall and then climbs back down in this chapter. Now, to be fair, the Knight's Fort has a stairway of ice in it. It's old and it's not perfect, but she climbs the wall. At least I should climb to the top of the wall. Bran thinks it should be me. Bran raised his head to look up the wall and imagined himself climbing inch by inch, squirming his fingers into cracks in the ice and kicking footholds with his toes. That made him smile in spite of everything. The dreams and the wildlings and Jon and everything. He had climbed the walls of Winterfell when he was little, and all the towers too, but none of them had been so high, and they were only stone. The wall could look like stone, all gray and pitted, but then the clouds would break and the sun would hit it differently, and all at once it would transform and stand there white and blue and glittering. It was the end of the world, old Nan always said. On the other side were monsters and giants and ghouls, but they could not pass so long as the wall stood strong. That's the second time he's done that. Nothing can pass if the wall stands there. The Nightfort was the only castle where the steps had been cut from the ice of the wall itself. He said that the outer surface of the wall wept icy he's recalling what he'd been told. The outer surface of the wall wept icy tears sometimes, though the core inside stayed frozen hard as a rock. At the end of this chapter is the part where Bran is walking through the door and some of the ice hits him on his face and he tastes it and it's salty. So the water around this, the ice on the wall is salty. And at one point, Jojen says, "We might find something," and Bran thinks, "or something might find us." I know this is obviously Martin's writing this to be foreshadowing, but it's also something's looking for them. Coldhands went there intentionally to look for Bran, and we all kind of presume that that's because he's a green seer, and that's what happens. You always seek the next green seer. So they went exploring. He starts recounting all the tales. The rat cook was white and almost as huge as a sow, which I believe is a female cow. There were a lot of rats at the Nightfort. That made me think of Dracula. There were worse things than rats down in the dark beneath the Nightfort. The Nightfort is the first castle on the wall and the largest. But it had also been the first one that was abandoned all the way back in the time of the Old King. I want to talk about that. Old King. Is that one person? Is that the first king? What's the Old King? Is that the first time? Is that the Pact of the God's Eye where the Starks married the Greenseers? Which is my made-up opinion.
I think he's talking about the Jaehaerys. That was his nickname. Jaehaerys.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Okay. So it means. All right.
Yeah.
You're right. 2 centuries passed. That's the next line. 2 centuries passed. There are ghosts here, Bran said, and then he talks about the 79 deserters. Old ghosts before the Old King, even before Aegon the Dragon. 79 deserters who went south to be outlaws. He mentioned this earlier when he listed the stories. One of these 79 deserters was Lord Riswell's youngest son. So when they reached the Barrowlands, they sought shelter at his castle, but Lord Riswell took them captive and returned them to the Nightfort. The Lord Commander had holes hewn in the top of the wall, and he put the deserters in them and sealed them up alive in the ice. They have spears and horns, and they all face north. The 79 Sentinels, they're called. They left their posts in life, so in death their watch goes on forever. and then later on the Lord Riz will join the Watch. So this is all the rooms that are in this place, and these are just some of them that they went into. There's a bell tower, there's a rookery, there's a library, there's a dungeon with 500 cells that could hold 500 people. There's a great hall. There's a bathhouse. There's a practice yard outside the armory, and there's a forge. And he mentions more rooms later. There's the largest castle on the wall. They never saw any of the ghosts, or the rat cook, or the mad axe, or the 79 sentinels. When then Mira returns from having climbed the wall, and she says she saw the haunted forests, hills rising wild as far as the eye could see. I even saw an eagle circling. I think he saw me too. I waved at him. I just think that's really fucking stupid. You're supposed to hide. You know there's wargs. Don't wave at a goddamn eagle. All right, so then...
That's like a drone or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Here comes America. Wave.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes.
All right, so when I hear this whole thing about the Nightfort and everything else going on down there, first thing I want to say is that when you hear this, how Bran cannot go inside of his wolf because of the pain, and then you see the same thing happen to Lad Sixskins, I think this is what happens to Jon. I think in order to get Jon back into his body, I think personally that the ghost is going to have to get killed to get Jon out of Ghost and get him back into his own body. I think that, to me, that's what that is foreshadowing. As for the Nightfort, I think the Nightfort, me myself, I have a lot of bad things going down at the Nightfort, but I think all the bad things can be attributed to, I think, the Green Seers. I don't believe that it's a haunted place that's making people go crazy. I think people are being possessed there. I think that you can take that, if you look at the guy known as the Mad Axe, who went around and killed all of his brothers. This is a guy who supposedly went crazy, but he was sane enough to take off his shoes before he went around and killed them. So I don't think that these people are so crazy. I think that they're getting possessed by the person in the werewolf throne, and he's causing them to do these atrocities to people there. And it's just they're getting a bad rep of the place. Also, I think that this Nightfort shows that the wall doesn't really hurt the others. You had the Night King living there. He was living in there. There's a wall. There's rooms that are carved directly into the wall. He was able to be on the other side in there and hanging out there for years. It never affected him. So I think, to me, that's more proof that that the wall may not be exactly what people think. I don't think it's there to stop the others. I will open it up to anybody on the panel about anything doing with the Nightfort and anything that James has said.
Guys, can I just jump in and say,
yeah,
I'm 5 hours ahead in Europe. I've got to go and get some sleep. Thanks very much for inviting me, Tony, and I hope it goes well for the rest of the evening. Well, cheers, guys.
Good night, sir.
Good night, Yoke Boy. Thank you for joining us, and please subscribe to Yoke Boy's channel and purchase one of those Radio Westeros t-shirts.
Right here. Yeah.
All right, see you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, anybody want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to add something, just an observation. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really funny that Bran is the only character that has so many chilling and creepy stories told to him all the time, constantly. Like, no, you cannot say that for any other character. So is it like when he's traveling and he passes all these places, especially the Nightfort, then somebody will tell him a story. But even at Game of Thrones, when you had Old Man telling him the stories about the others and all those, and he always said, "Oh, I like the creepy stories." So it's, I don't know if Martin uses that to create this whole creepy thing around Bran, or is it just a build up to his what's is gonna come to in the future? Is he gonna be somebody that will be creepy in a way? Because I mean, it is creepy if you're controlling somebody with your mind. That's creepy.
Yeah, his whole arc is creepy. It's true. Where he is, like the type, even if Bloodraven's basically a good guy, the power of the children of the forest in their cave is just full of, references to death and blood sacrifice, and it doesn't. A lot of people wonder if Bran's ever going to leave that cave.
No, I think he's staying there.
We go around the horn. Does everyone think he's stuck in the cave? Or is everyone
stuck? Yeah.
Stuck.
I think it's some type of like Atlas Stone type situation that Bloodraven wants out, and I think that Bran has to take his spot in order for him to get out. That's what I've always thought. I just can't see Bloodraven, me personally, doing all this just to die in the end and just pass away after he's taught everything he has. He just never has been that type of person from what he's always been more scheming and more out for himself, and there's always something else there. So I just can't see him just saying, all right, I'm going to teach you everything I know, and then I'm going to pass away so you could take over. It just doesn't seem to fit to me for that.
But he is dissolving Bloodraven, so he's already a part of the tree. But I think Bran's going to stay there. Physically, but mentally he's going to be all over the place anyway, right? So it's really a parallel to what James is always repeating about this. Can you have everything, but actually just mentally, but not be able to have it physically, or to have it to be at one place? But like he has really great powers, but that's the experiences of others. It's not his experience. Right.
And that's kind of exactly what Yolkboy... Go ahead, Aziz.
I was just agreeing, that's all. So yeah, go ahead.
That's exactly what Yolkboy was saying. If Bran, by staying in one place, Martin has given Bran omnipotence.
Yes.
All right.
Well, here's about the Nightfort, actually, before we get too far into that. That's too late, but whatever. I'll talk about the Nightfort anyway.
Do it.
One thing I think it's really kind of a peculiar thing to consider is, okay, so Coldhands shows Sam the secret passage to get through the Nightfort, and Sam tells Bran, you never find it on your own. This is how you find it. Well, the Nightfort's been abandoned for 2 centuries. So it's before Bloodraven's time in the Night's Watch. He joined the Night's Watch, 70-some years ago. So Nightfort's been closed. His whole time he was in the Watch, the Nightfort was closed too. So Coldhands, knowing either his own, he's so old that he knows that passage from when he was alive, which is definitely possible. He's more than 200 years old. Or Bloodraven found out about the passage somehow, like in some books or something, and that's how he knows to find it. But that whole, like, the location of all that is really interesting to me, like how, because Sam says that no one would find it unless they were shown. So somehow Bloodraven and or Coldhands learned about that passage, and that's really important, potentially. But it's kind of an open mystery, but I like to point to it.
Great point.
Yeah, well, also when you think about, when you look at Coldhands, and when he talks about, when Bran says, what's going on with your hands, at that point, Coldhands, at this whole time, Coldhands doesn't realize he's dead until that second that Bran brings it up to him. Look at your hands, what's going on? And then he looks at him, and then he realizes, hey, I am dead. But all the way up until that, I believe that Coldhands really thought that he was alive. So that's why I do not think that it's possible that it can't be Bloodraven warging this man. It has to be his own mind in there somewhat of Coldhands, and not just Bloodraven controlling him. Because right up until that point, you could see he thought he was alive. And then when he looked at his hands, he's like, well, when people die, their blood congeals to their fingertips. And then he realizes to himself, I'm dead right now.
I mean, and just the appearance of Coldhands, when Coldhands actually shows up, we get a big punch in the face of fantasy and magic. That what this story is, based loosely upon, a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of magic, and I just think that it would be a poor story if all of a sudden it turns out that Bloodraven was just working Coldhands, you know, or he just picked somebody randomly and just made him into Coldhands. Like I don't buy that. You know, I think Coldhands is a standalone character. I think that he's doing what the reader feels as, oh, he's on the good team. You know, he's helping out our good guys. He helps Bran. He helps Sam. You know, so I don't see Coldhands kind of falling into obscurity. I guess in this story and him just disappearing. I think that he has an agenda and he's sided with what we would call the right side or the good side.
Or the better side.
Or the better side, yeah, because it's all bad. Yeah, it's all death and dying.
Yeah, I mean,
he's definitely sided with the lesser of two evils.
He's working with Bloodraven. The Ravens with him, the Crows are with him. When he goes off to kill the mutineers, the Ravens go and help him kill the mutineers. He's working with them. There's no doubt that they're together. That's the duo right there.
I don't think he himself, Coldhands, was controlling the elk necessarily, and the ravens either. It's possible he was, but that's really something if he's doing that. If he's undead and a warg, not controlled by Bloodraven or just communicating with him a little bit, that's just a whole other thing. Like that's a much more powerful being than he might be. Like you go all the way to range from him being some sort of good guy white along the lines of Beric, but through a different magic, you know, instead of R'hllor, you got whatever. All the way to him being like, the cold version.
Cold preserves.
Yeah.
Sir.
All the way from him being that kind of just controlled like a vessel, all the way from him being, you know, an undead being that has powers that he carried over from his lifetime, you know, like he has some sort of green seer powers. I tend to prefer that it's Bloodraven running those animals too with him, but I'm not super confident in that. And I also wonder about his origin in terms of, again, Bloodraven disappeared 70-some years ago. He didn't go on a ranging by himself. He was Lord Commander, right? So he's not just going off by himself. So he had people with him. So that's one theory that I kind of like, that this was one of those guys that was with him on his last ranging. But that asks an even bigger question. What the heck happened to them? This is 70 years before. Like, the others weren't active back then as far as we know. So what went wrong? Like, why did he... Something. I don't know. That's an interesting story.
So when Bloodraven went on that raging mission, he's 77 years old. There's no way the man got there by himself.
Yeah, exactly.
He needs help. You know, that's an old man. He needs help to get through that winter up there. Someone to help him get there.
Just like
77-year-old Coldhands.
Just like Lyanna wasn't, you know, it's like the Kingsguard weren't expected to deliver Lyanna's baby. You know, someone else was there, right?
Somebody's there.
So what do we do? Cut it out of her? Sounds right.
Yeah.
I'm the sword of the morning. I'll cut the umbilical cord.
Well, listen, Rhaegar could do anything. So Rhaegar could. He's MacGyver. Yeah, he could have got that baby.
MacGyver.
No, man, Rhaegar just sang that baby out of there, man. Yeah.
What are you doing? I'm singing. Get your face out of my vagina.
There's no mess
Get your face out of my vagina.
No doubt about it.
All right. You said cold preserves. I did think while I was reading this, cold preserves. Yeah, we all may already have this knowledge retained, but to me, remember that they put a hand inside a jar, and the white hand to King's Landing to prove that there were whites, but by the time they got there, it was just bones and it wasn't moving. If it's cold, those things aren't going to eat it, at least not as quickly. So it's like you need the cold in order for the whites to be able to survive. Otherwise, as soon as if you have warmth, they die. Not just fire, but like regular warmth, because bugs and shit will eat them. I just think that's funny.
That's
all right.
Can I just add something? Yeah. What you can notice about Coldhands is that he sounds really educated when he speaks to Bran. That's a really cool idea. So it might help us to maybe solve. I'll backtrack him who he might be.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, when he was telling about his hands, he was actually explaining it
talks
from
about
like a Yes. So it's not just a common, regular guy who ended up in the Nightfort
Yeah.
for like.
It could be, we're told that when Bloodraven took the black, some of the Raven's teeth took the black with him, so you would expect them to be loyal, and you would also expect that to be part of how he became Lord Commander, because he had, 50
Yeah,
dudes
knowledge.
that took the black with him that would vote for him when he stood for Lord Commander, right away.
And
So-
the cold preserves, that's a scientific fact, so
Yeah.
it's just a
A lot of good
observation.
ideas there, yeah.
Yeah, we're still
All right.
talking about. We were on Coldhands, though, right? Oh, I'm sorry, James. Go ahead.
Oh no, we're good with this. I haven't gotten to Coldhands yet. I'm good doing this. I know I'm taking too long. There's just so much in this fucking chapter because to me, what Martin's doing in this chapter is he wants it to be eerie, but he also wants to tell us the Night's King story. And I know I'm biased, but he's trying to tell us the Night's King story so that prepping us for the next chapter. But he's also got he can't make it too obvious because it was just the Night's King, and then we get this character. I think that's too obvious. I don't know if y'all fucking know, but I think that Coldhands is the Night's King. But regardless of that, there's so much history in just this chapter. All right, so the Night's King. Night's King, he had been the 13th man to lead the Night's Watch, a warrior who knew no fear, and that was the fault in him, Old Man would add, for all men must know fear. All men must die. All men must serve. All men must know fear. A woman was his downfall, a woman glimpsed from atop the wall, with skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. Fearing nothing, he chased her and caught her and loved her, though her skin was cold as ice. And when he gave his seed to her, he gave his soul as well. He brought her back to the Nightfort and proclaimed her a queen and himself her king. And with strange sorceries he bound his sworn brothers to his will. For 13 years they had ruled, Night's King and his corpse queen. I think that's key. Corpse queen. All this is fucking legend, so we don't know any of it, but it calls her a corpse queen. I don't think that's true. Then, till finally the Stark of Winterfell and Jormungand of the Wildlings had joined to free the Watch from bondage. To free the Watch from bondage. That's the winners writing the history books, in my opinion. I think they voluntarily took this up. After his fall, when it was found that he had been sacrificing to the others, also not true, I think he's the source of the others, all records of Night's King had been destroyed, his very name forbidden. Then we get the whole, some say he was an Umber Flint Nori, he was a Stark, the brother of the man who brought him down. That's what Old Nan says. The brother of the man who brought him down. He was a Stark of Winterfell, and who can say? Mayhaps his name was Brandon. Mayhaps he slept in this very bed in this very room. And later on, you get your monster, Brandon Stark, which could be read either way. It also says, Night's King was only a man by light of day. Old Man would always say, but the night was his to rule. And again, I keep saying the Night's King. It never, ever says the Night's King. It's always Night's King.
Let's talk about the Night's King real quick then. We got a little information, background on the Night's King, the Night's Queen situation there. Now, they say that they were giving these sacrifices to the others, but it seems to me that the sacrifices they were giving were to the Weirwood trees, right? They were stringing the entrails in there. So how is that sacrifices to the others? I think that would be more sacrifices to the old god. As for when they say that he enslaved the Night's Watch, it makes me think of that Telltale game, and he bound them to his will. In that Telltale game, if anyone has played it or didn't play it, whatever, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't played it or anything, but there's a part in that game where something like that goes down, so I think it possibly could be something to do with that, and that's how he pulled it off and stuff. But I see him doing sacrifices. I can't see how that can be considered sacrifices to the others when he's hanging entrails in trees. That should be a sacrifice to the old gods.
Right. Agreed.
Can I just add something?
Mm-hmm.
When he said that they were free, but in a way that's if you have a powerful warg or something, that he could have enslaved everybody with his mind. So in that way, I don't know. It's the opposite in this case, right? If they were freed, but it's really tricky because you don't get all the background story. Because every time somebody would say something crucial,
Let's go through it like
somebody
this.
would interrupt.
Who does everybody think the Night? Does anyone have any clue who they believe the Night King is? Which Stark that they're talking about? Does anyone have anything narrowed down on the Stark that it could be?
I don't know who he is, but I think he's mostly a parallel to. He mostly resembles. If he's supposed to resemble a character in the current story, he resembles Jon Snow more than anybody. I think Jon. One crucial thing about Jon's death is that him being raised, he'll be equipped, so to speak, being semi-undead to go into the extreme cold, to go north. Well, like pretty much no one else can do that because they're human and you can't handle that kind of cold. But he'll be able to, and so I think basically some of the stories that are told about Night's King are similar to how I think people might remember Jon, as because he's kind of controversial as a leader, as we know, because he was trying to change all these things and try to change how they work and try to bring the wildlings through. And if you think about how someone would look on that years later, if they have the attitude of the average Westerosi, they'd be like, who the hell was this crazy guy, like this horrible leader that tried to bring the wildlings through the wall? And I mean, obviously, if he saves the world, people will remember him better than that. But if they don't know, if things get better and nobody knows what happened, he could be one of these guys that's remembered the wrong way. He did some of the things right, like the queen, the Night's Queen. If you guys listen to Radio Westeros' latest episode, they make a good point about Melisandre kind of fitting the Nissa Nissa theory, or the Nissa Nissa concept pretty well, because she's not, she's not a regular person, and she's really devoted to the cause. She's one of the few people you can imagine that's willing to give their life up. Maybe. I don't even know that she is, but if there's someone willing to give their life up for the cause, Melisandre's a decent candidate for that, if not the best candidate for that. Plus, she's a woman, she's kind of magical, so I can see all that fitting together. So I think that's what Night's King is. The main thing is we're supposed to learn from that is like how that applies to the story now, because George does that so much with his history. It's something to. It's almost like a form of foreshadowing, the history that he tells us.
Can I continue to your story, Aziz? Also, I don't think
Definitely.
they mentioned it, Radio Westeros, but if Mel is Nissa Nissa, you should one of the things that is feeding up to that story is that she's always presenting this symbol of her faith, which is the heart, and in order to get the Lightbringer, he has to stab her in the heart. So that's one of the things. That's really interesting.
It is. I understand why they say that Mel is Nissa Nissa. I personally don't think that she is, but I understand why people could believe that she is. And she does. I just think that she would love to be Nissa Nissa. I think if they told her, yes, I'll take it. I'll stab me, John. Go right ahead. Here's my breath. I think she'd just be too up for it to be the one to do it. I think if it's going to happen to someone, it's got to be someone that's doesn't want to die, that's not up to it, that's more of a sacrifice like that, not someone who really wants to do it. If John was going to stab, say, Arya or something like that, I would think it would take someone bad like that more than Melisandre.
I don't ever want to hear you say that John is gonna stab Arya.
Well, I think it's
ever again.
I think it's better for him to stab Arya than to sleep with her the way George had it planned.
Yeah.
That was his original incest plan. He made it. He didn't want her. He diluted it a little. Thankfully, it was.
Yeah. That was a little crazy for him. I think he talked himself out of it. He was like, wait a second.
I'd have probably put that book down. I'd have been like, all right, well.
The creepiest thought I've ever heard, by the way, was in relation to George's writing, from like a meta perspective. It's kind of along the lines of, I think it was James, he brought this up earlier about how he was kind of alone when he was a kid. It's comparing the fact that, you think about Aegon the Conqueror and his two sisters. Well, George had two sisters. calling Dr. Freud.
You do a lot of things in those projects when you ain't got no money. You know.
This.
Yeah. A lot of things happen.
This is what I'm a part of right now. Yeah. This. I'm just really happy to be here. Yeah. Talk about George sleeping with his sisters.
I'm just saying these things. They come from places and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. No,
you gotta start somewhere.
I'm sure he just did it because he loved his sisters and he just wanted his sisters to rule next to him. That's why, that's exactly the reason why. So we're still on Coldhands, or are we on to Bloodraven issue right now? And I think we hit Bloodraven. I think that's the end of it. I think we're at the end of it right now.
All right.
Shit, you know what? I think it. You know what? And we kind of called it out at the beginning. I thought that a lot of this would kind of bleed together, and we would kind of collectively, go over most of this stuff.
So the last section is disease, right?
Yep. We got the bloody. We have talked about a lot of the stuff already, but now we could focus on a little more. We've got mostly. This is pretty much the Bran and Dance chapters moving towards the cave. Start with the scene where they've been making their way through the forest for a while. The elk has died, and they ate well that night when they got to eat the elk. But made Bran sad. Then they eat, or maybe I can't remember what order it is. Whether they eat the dead Night's Watch brothers, and are told it's pig.
The pig.
Yeah, I don't know if that's before or after the elk. I think it's after the elk, but
after, yeah, because Bloodraven just disappears. He's like, I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, yeah. So then they make it to the cave and get attacked by the Whites, which is kind of interesting because you think about this whole journey. They've been Bran, who has these powers, apparently, that Bloodraven can reach out to him and sense, but I guess the others can't sense him at all because they don't really have any problems with the Whites or the others until right in front of this cave. That whole journey... that it's not a problem for them. So I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know if you can read a whole lot into that, but it's interesting. So then they get inside the cave, and you find out that there's some magic involved. This is kind of crucial. Coldhands can't go in, and the Whites can't follow. And there's werewoods on either side of the cave entrance, which I think is pretty significant. If not just symbolic, it could be sort of how the magic works, and that makes me wonder about how the werewoods and the Hearttrees interact with the others. Are they kind of neutral, or do they have the power to see through them also? I kind of think they don't, because then they would have been able to spot Bran maybe. I don't know. Then we see our first real child of the forest, in the flesh for real, for sure, like one that we're 100% certain that's what she is, and we find out about Coldhands being really old. We get they killed him long ago line, and then things just get creepier. We get into seeing the inside of this cave, which is full of fossilized bones. You've got more fresher bones. You've got weirwood roots going everywhere. So you get a sense of how deep the root systems of these trees are. It's really just. It's extensive. It's massive.
The cave of the singers is something else.
And there's a huge river, and there's a stone bridge, and there's a cave. There's the room that he finds where there's still some singers that are still alive. Like that's what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And they kind of look. One of them looks at him, and it's just, oof. It's probably the creepiest thing in the whole series, I think, as far as like getting into the magic and. We don't have anything like it. I mean, with the magic of R'hllor is kind of creepy, but there's no like layer of R'hllor, where there's just all this. There's no cave of ancient R'hllor cave or something. There's nothing like it. So, I think it's just great. I hope we get to see more of it. And then he slowly learns what's going on as far as his powers and his potential. We get a sense, kind of. indirectly that he's stronger than even Bloodraven thinks he is. He does things that seem to be against the rules. Maybe, right? It's not 100% sure if that's what's happening, but it kind of seems like it. And he gets fed the paste, which may or may not be Jojen, and he learns to control the ravens. He's a better sense of ghost, and he starts to warg into Hodor, which is one of the things he's not supposed to be allowed to do or able to do. Varamir tries to do it in his moment of death, and it, obviously we know that didn't go very well. And so the crux of all this is, I think the biggest moments are his actually tapping into the werewood. All that other stuff is really important. It's really creepy. That's the backdrop. But the actual visions, I think, are the real meat of the scenes, where we see not just the possibility that he actually talked to, that his father actually heard him talking to him, which was strongly hinted at, but that he sees these progressive visions, which have been. That's one of the. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when you read the book the first time, it was one of the. There's a lot of subtleties that you pick up over time in your second read, or you go in the forums or whatever, and you find things that other people have discovered, and you kind of go through the process of digesting the book for the first time. That's one of those things that was just obvious because it's not subtle. It's like Bran's having visions of the past. It was one of the first things that people just latched onto and just really tried to learn about, tried to figure out and interpret. I mean, that was a lot of fun, I think. That, in particular, we like to analyze these things. We like to try to figure things out, but also it's cool just to sit back and remember how fun some of these things were when we first learned them and discovered them. And I'm reminded of that whenever I talk about those visions. I remember how much fun it was to see those and be like, holy crap! Whoa, what is that? Who is that? Who's that guy cutting the arrows? Who is that? It took forever for people to figure out, to settle on who that is. But we'll have to talk about that. Who do you guys think that is? We can maybe go through maybe we should start in the beginning of the visions and work our way back, though.
That's the best way.
Let's do that. Let's do that. So let me get them pulled up here.
While you're pulling that up, I did want to add. I didn't quite get to. I know I was being detailed, but there were a couple of things in here I didn't. But I did want to add one of the things that happened in one of the chapters I read. When Bran goes to see the Green Seer face that he walks through to get to the other side, it was white werewood, and there was a face on it. A glow came from the wood like milk and moonlight. So faint it's scarcely seen. That's dawn.
Yeah,
that's exactly how dawn's described.
You are totally right, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I thought of that. I meant to bring it up, and we skipped past it. This was pointed out to me really recently too. I didn't catch that all the million times I've read.
I've never caught that. Please explain that to me again. I've never.
Well, here's what's we're going to be talking about it more in our Dane episode because our guest David Beers, aka Lucifer Means Lightbringer, he just started a podcast too. He's got 2 episodes out, and. He pointed out the glow. That's the only time I've seen werewood doesn't glow in any other circumstance. That's kind of interesting. And then he talks about dawn. It's the same kind of glow that dawn has. Similar language is used to describe it. I don't know what that connection could mean. It's hard to. We're going to throw out some ideas in that episode on that, but I think it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool catch.
Yeah, it's a great catch. I'd never heard that before.
I didn't know till I read it. I was just reading this today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's there's something going on with that door.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It's one of the more like overt magical things that's in the series, like a talking door. Like that sounds like I don't know. It sounds like normally you would if you had only read the first book and someone's like, "There's a talking door in this series, in this following series, Game of Thrones." I don't know, Harry Potter or something else. You probably wouldn't guess the talking door was in Game of Thrones if you had only read the first book. But there it was.
Right there.
Yeah.
Can I add a couple more things? I know we kind of skipped over, and that may have been intentional because we want to get this done, but there were a couple of things I got stars by. And I know you're in the middle of it, Aziz.
Yeah, you're good.
Gilly, when Gilly comes up through the tunnel, Bran, she mentions something about the castle, and Bran says, Bran wondered what she'd think when she saw Winterfell, if she ever did. That to me is like Mark can't just straight up say it, but so she's headed to Winterfell in my opinion. Bran also, you'll come back for me, she said to Sam. Gilly says to Sam. Sam says, as soon as I can, he promised, then we'll go somewhere warm. When he heard that, part of Bran wondered what he was doing. Will I ever go someplace warm again? Bran thinks to himself. I don't think he's ever leaving that throne. Green Seer throne. Anyway, again, the water that drops on him is salty. That's worth saying.
I think also it's interesting that it hit him in the forehead. And
That happens all the time to him. When he's on top of Hodor's back, he constantly gets his head hit on ledges or barely brushing them. I don't know whether that's leading to something.
There's one idea I had along those lines is that you've got when the three-eyed crow is talking to Bran in his dreams, he's trying to tell him to open his third eye, and he's pecking him in the forehead. And to me, that's a little bit symbolic. The tear from the door.
Hitting him in the
When he passes through this door, it's kind of symbolic. It's like his third eye is crying almost.
Yeah. Real quick, let me ask you all real quick a question. Does anyone believe that there is an ice dragon in this story? Or there will be.
Yes.
What do you mean ice dragon? You mean the dragon literally made of ice?
A dragon literally made of ice.
I'm gonna say no. I think it's symbolically, yeah, but I'm like an actual ice. I don't know. I mean, if there's ice spiders, I guess there could be an ice dragon, but I don't know. It's just
we haven't really seen those though.
Yeah, we haven't. We've just heard of them. Yeah, like that's not even like.
So no.
There's an. Oh, sorry.
I gotta know. Aziz is no. Don,
I guess I'm gonna say no. Yeah, I'll say no.
Right. Kraken, what do you think? No.
Okay. What I want, yes. What I think, no.
So no, it's the answer. James.
No is the answer. Yeah.
James,
what was the question? Sorry, what was the question?
Do you think there will be a physical ice dragon in this story?
No. I think we'll get a undead dragon. I don't think we're getting an ice dragon, no.
Okay. Nico?
I think there may be a fourth dragon, but I don't think it's made of ice.
If the undead dragon is undead, through the magic of the others, you could arguably call that an ice dragon.
Right.
Then in that case, yeah.
Well, and James, that also goes back to your Lich Garden, your Lich Dragon. So that's and you said that.
Nico?
Yeah.
Nico, what do you think?
Yes, I think we're getting ice dragon. There's no doubt about it in my mind. What's really funny is that you have to get the opposites in this story because Martin's playing with that all the time with ice and fire, which is the opposite. But what's really funny, especially about the ice and fire, is that both things burn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really cold things really burn.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that there will be an ice dragon. The fact that George has taken credit for creating the ice dragon is a reason why I have to think that if I created something or took credit for creating something, I'm going to put it in my masterpiece. So for that reason, I'm going to say that I believe that there will be a physical.
It's like in a beautiful story about these houses and history and what this person stands for and what that person stands for, and through all of the civil war and turmoil and history of the story, we can conclude that where we are right now is a song of ice and fire and a battle of ice and fire. The magic progression through this entire story, and then with specifically Jon and Dany, ice and fire comparison, but then George is laughing at us, be like, haha, this is actually about an ice dragon and a couple fire dragons, just right in your face. So it's really up in the air right now.
I just don't think that there's a credible threat without an ice dragon. I don't think there's enough of a threat to Westeros without the ice dragon.
And we already know that the ice dragon has the capability of taking out 3 dragons by itself.
It took out 6 dragons by itself. 6 5.
Fuck. Okay. Well, thanks for. Yeah, that's a valid point there, sir.
He can do it. So we get back to Z.
There might be. Can I just say something?
Yes, you can.
First thing is that the Martin already put everything that from his other stories, so non A Song of Ice and Fire related. So his previous works, there are bits from those works in A Song of Ice and Fire. So why not have the ice dragon that's actually dealing with the whole thing? And the second thing. Well, if you might argue that warging a dragon, so controlling it, is in a way also opposing the dragon. I mean, you would just have more dragons, whether if it's ice or fire, right?
Mhm.
And dragons are not cool for men because, like, they will burn stuff.
And
So you're just getting more dragons. It's just the other, it has different features, right?
Yeah, I think and if you look at it, the first thing that Bran sees, it looks like he's looking beyond into the lands always winter when the tears against his face and they start to burn and all that. Yeah, he's got to, if he's gonna go out there and he's stuck in that tree and stuff, he could go out there in somebody else in the dragon, walking the dragon. That's why he could be flying with Jon. He could be walking the dragon. Jon could be on the back of it, and they can be going out to the lands always with the fight to that ice dragon. Who knows? But we shall get to Aziz with the prophecies of Bran right now. So that way we can get this. I know Don has to go.
I know you want to get it over with. Can I add some stuff? I actually thought I was supposed to read the previous chapter that Aziz read. Can I add some stuff?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So there's something in Norse mythology. The way you can tell if somebody is actually meant to be Odin in disguise is if they have one eye and the word hoary is used to describe them. Hoary. In that chapter with Bran and Coldhands, that happens twice. Hodor walked with one eye. Where the fuck did it go? Hodor walked with one eye frozen shut, his thick brown beard a tangle of hoarfrost. It also happens later when they're talking about one of Varamir's dogs. The Summer and the one-eyed dog get in a fight. His jaws closed on matted fur slick with hoarfrost. So the hoarfrost again with a one-eyed thing. Also, that wolf Summer technically ends up in charge of all those wolves. They were his now. They were pack. Not a pack, not his pack. They were pack, and they were his now. No, the boy whispered, we have another pack. Well, that's foreshadowing Nymeria, in my opinion, getting all these fucking wolves behind her. And later on, and soon after she mentioned it, I'm glad that you noted that that's human flesh they're eating. Not only are the wolves eating it, but Bran and those people are literally eating human flesh, which is what we talked about earlier.
A lot of people brought that up in the comment section as well. Yeah, they were picking up on what everybody's putting down.
It's interesting, too, like there's a little parallel there. I think it's less clear. I don't think it's necessarily true, but it's right around the same time that Bran is eating is cannibalizing, thinking he's eating pork. Arya is training with the Faceless Men, and she eats that white meat and goes, wait, what am I eating?
Yeah,
and he's like, it's
he goes,
pork. And they're like, it's pork.
It's just pig, child. Yeah. Child.
And I think it probably is pig, but I was like, whoa, that's like the same thing.
There's also Faceless is mentioned in this chapter. Somewhere the word Faceless is mentioned.
Exactly how many Starks are eating human flesh?
Yeah. Also, to talk about what Coldhands is, several times in the book it's talked about that ravens come with letters attached to them, and you can still train ravens to speak human language a little bit, but it used to be that humans understood the raven language. Well, in this one, about Coldhands, some ravens would fly to the ranger and mutter at him, and it seemed to Bran that he understood their quirks and squawks. So to me, Coldhands is old as shit. Also, he's obviously killed Men of the Night's Watch. He closes his eyes and doesn't sleep. No, he doesn't breathe. You mentioned these, but and then the kid's dying. There's one more thing I had to find. Dreams will not sustain you. This is about him not eating. Dreams will not sustain you. Not even green dreams. Dreams are what we have. All we have, Bran thinks to himself. That just made me think of the last book, A Dream of Spring, because it's all going to end eventually, but it's nice to have it for a while. These woods are not as empty as you think. You cannot know. The light might summon from the darkness. Obviously, these are Varamir's dogs. Night's Watch killed by Coldhands. I'm trying to knock these out because I know you read it and I thought I was supposed to too. It's my bad.
Is that right?
The wargs recognize each other. Summer recognizes that the other wolf is a warg. That's important in my opinion. That's about. The ranger killed. Coldhands stood beside the door, a raven on his arm, both staring at the fire. Reflections from the flame glittered off 4 black eyes. He does not eat, Bran remembered, and he fears the flames. That's because he's, I think we all agree, a white, not another. He's a white.
Yeah, a good guy white, or somehow semi-good guy. Not your normal white. Not your garden variety.
Yeah.
Because obviously we've never seen any of the other ones talk or have any kind of or they're just
consciousness.
Zombies, yeah, something like that.
And it goes without saying, he says, "You're a monster," and Bran repeatedly talks about monsters in this chapter and the previous one. Also, when he describes, Mira says, "Who sent you? Who is this 3-eyed crow? A friend? Dreamer, wizard, call him what you will, the last green seer." To me, that's all fucking bullshit. Call him what you will. I don't believe any of that. And it was mentioned in one of the comments, when Bran finally does meet the Blood Raven, when he finally gets into the fucking place, he says, "Are you the 3-eyed crow?" And he goes, crow? It says crow? Once a eye, black of garb and black of blood, meaning that he was a part of the Night's Watch. "I have been many things, Bran. Now I am as you see me." He's not the 3-eyed crow in my opinion. He's been watching him, but he's not the 3-eyed crow. Personal opinion. All right, I'm done sidetracking it.
Let's go to the visions. Yeah, let's see those.
Well, right after this, guys, I want to bounce out of here.
All right, we're doing the visions. All right, we're doing the visions, and then we're out.
All right, so
go ahead.
I'll read them real fast, and then we'll just discuss each one individually because most of them are pretty simple. The rest of his father's words were drowned out by a sudden clatter of wood on wood. Eddard Stark dissolved like mist in a morning sun. Now 2 children danced across the godswood, hooting at one another as they dueled with broken branches. The girl was the older and taller of the 2. Arya, Bran thought eagerly as he watched her leap up onto a rock and cut at the boy. But that couldn't be right. If the girl was Arya, the boy was Bran himself, and he had never worn his hair so long, and Arya never beat me playing swords. The way that girl was beating him. She slashed the boy across his thigh so hard that his leg went out from under him, and he fell into the pool and began to splash and shout. "You be quiet, stupid," the girl said, tossing her own branch aside. "It's just water. Do you want old Nan to hear and run tell father?" She knelt and pulled her brother from the pool, but before she got him out again, the 2 of them were gone. After that, the glimpses came faster and faster, till Bran was feeling lost and dizzy. He saw no more of his father, nor the girl who looked like Arya, but a woman heavy with child emerged naked and dripping from the black pool, knelt before the tree, and begged the old gods for a son who would avenge her. Then there came a brown-haired girl slender as a spear who stood on the tips of her toes to kiss the lips of a young knight as tall as Hodor. A dark-eyed youth, pale and fierce, sliced 3 branches off the weirwood and shaped them into arrows. The tree itself was shrinking, growing smaller with each vision, whilst the lesser trees dwindled into saplings and vanished, only to be replaced by other trees that would dwindle and vanish in their turn. And now the Lord's Bran glimpsed were tall and hard, stern men in fur and chainmail. Some more faces he remembered from the statues in the crypts, but they were gone before he could put a name to them. Then as he watched, a bearded man forced a captive down onto his knees before the heart tree. A white-haired woman stepped toward them through a drift of dark red leaves, a bronze sickle in her hand. "No," Bran said, "no, don't!" But they could not hear him, no more than his father had. The woman grabbed the captive by the hair, hooked the sickle round his throat, and slashed. And through the mist of centuries, the broken boy could only watch as the man's feet drummed against the earth. But as his life flowed out of him in a red tide, Brandon Stark could taste the blood. Yeah, that's such a great chapter. Such a great moment. Such a great chapter.
Fantastic.
So
awesome.
Let's circle back and we could just talk about each little part of that real quick because I think most of them are pretty easy. First of all, do you guys think that Eddard, that he heard him, or was that he was just hearing something else? Was that just a coincidence, or was he really hearing him?
Well, I've been watching a lot of Flash recently on the CW, so I think all this alternate parallel stuff. No, I think it's pretty simple. Bran, it's showing Bran's powers, that he's that in depth with, reaching back in time, and I do think that he actually talked to his dad, and Blood Raven's like, oh, you can't alter the past, but Bran, even in one of his first attempts, was like, Dad, basically, and his dad heard him. You know, so that just builds Bran up for, you know, later things.
James, you think he heard him?
No, I think that unless you're in the present time, you can't hear. That's my opinion. That's why Theon hears the Bran, or if he's hearing something through it. You can only hear it in the present, not in the past. It's just the rustling of leaves, which, I mean, he may have heard something that was like, whoosh, and he's like, what the fuck is that? But I don't think he can. I don't think he's literally communicating.
I wanted to bring this up after everyone said something, but you brought up the exact phrase that I wanted to talk about, so I have to jump in real quick. The rustling. If you look at every time someone tries to speak to someone through a weirwood, like when Bran or Jon or Theon hears the weirwood, or even in this case, potentially Ned, it's 100% of the time the adjective George chooses is rustling. It's the sound of the weirwoods. It's rustling. When they think they're hearing something, that's always the word he chooses. I was really struck by that.
Well, then you know what the fuck we need to do. We need to go to a Search of Ice and Fire and look up rustling, because those are the times when we're going to see somebody warging in the past.
Something?
Yeah. Go ahead, Nico.
Or every tree in every possible universe rustles, even if there's no wind. So.
Wow.
Oh my God! Look at all the fucking shit that came up. Okay, so in a Game of Thrones prologue, a cold wind was blowing out of the north, and it made the trees rustle like living things. They're fucking all through this, and it's arguable that every single time he's putting this in here, he's intending for later on for somebody to be looking at that moment. Yeah, damn, there are so many.
The Theon one is the same thing. Theon, he's like, was that a rustle? It was like, it's a rustling, but he thinks he hears his name, but it's mingled with the rustling. Yeah, I was really like, wow. We found this when we were looking for, when we did our weirwood episode a while back, and that's when I noticed it.
Yes, that's true, Aziz, but we cannot assume that this rustling sound means that somebody is actually talking to the person.
Oh, I agree.
Maybe
yeah.
It's only used as a markup or tagging. This is a certain point in time, space-time, whatever, that the Green Seer saw this moment, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In Arya has a chapter, in the Godswood she found her, this is in A Clash of Kings, in the Godswood she found her broomstick sword where she had left it and carried it to the heart tree, then she knelt, red leaves rustled. Every time there's, all of these are about the werewoods or in situations.
Yeah, like you said, Nico, it doesn't have to be like a sign that someone's talking through it. It could be just a way to remind us of the tree, that there's life inside it, there's a soul in there or something. Yes. Something's looking through, or it's a vessel. I don't know. Some sort of combination of those things, all of the above. I don't know. It's cool.
Because
really cool.
Alter the past that's a contradiction because of the things.
I don't like that. I hope that I don't like.
I never believed that he could switch the back. I never thought that he.
We don't want time travel in this story.
What I would think would be great though would be at the end of this story if we get this like the epilogue chapter where I think it'll be a wedding, 10 years, probably maybe Bran's 10 years after the end of the final battle. We get a setup of all these different people, and it's told from an omniscient perspective, implying that it's Bran's final chapter. But then I would love for some kind of inkling that Bran is looking so far back into the past that he. To me, it's cyclical, and I don't know if this exists within the Thousand Worlds universe. It doesn't make any sense for this to be true, but I would love the idea for it to be implicit that Bran is reaching such an omnipotence that he's able to see into the future by looking so far into the past.
That's really
because I think in this world you cannot really see into the future. It's all like it's a dream and you trying to make a meaning from it. Like the Prince that was promised. I think that's going to apply to a bunch of people. The Azor Ahai, it's going to apply to a bunch of people. It's how they interpret it and what they think it means. But if Bran I love the idea of Bran looking so far into the past that he can see the future. The sort of omnipotence.
Or vice versa.
Okay, so let's do the next one. The next one is
can I just add something else?
Yeah.
I don't understand why everybody wants this time travel. Like you don't have enough cool things in the books.
Yeah, I don't want it. I don't want time travel. Get away.
Yeah, and the second thing, like Martin, James, I think Martin should finish the book with a divorce, not with a wedding, because.
Bottom world, an annulment.
Weddings are bad in Westeros. Divorces, though, maybe that's the opposite. Weddings are bad, divorces are good.
Red divorce.
Hey,
oh my god, if it's
Red
a
divorce.
can you imagine the divorce?
The yellow divorce.
Aziz, next one.
Okay, so the next
Hey,
one.
hang on. Let me jump in here. I'm actually
You're
having.
the one saying you have to go.
Yeah, I'm having an intervention over here in my life. Yeah, so my brother and my girlfriend over here. So I do have to go. I do have to go. I got
night, sir.
Tony,
Alex, love you.
It's been an honor, James. I'm really happy to finally get to talk to you.
You as well. There will be more.
Nico, you know I love you. Aziz,
Yes,
I'm coming over and see you soon, buddy.
Cool,
Don't even worry about it. So, Tony, thanks again for orchestrating this and having me in here. And sorry to everybody in the chat room. I do have to go.
All right, eat your pizza.
Yeah, eat my pizza. Bye, guys.
Peace out.
Bye, Alex.
So yeah, if you guys didn't catch that, he and I live like 20 minutes from each other. We didn't know that for the longest time. Nico figured it out. It's like, you guys live near each other. We're like, what? Like, really?
It took
like, yeah. It takes somebody in Europe to figure out that we live 20 minminutes away from each other.
Somebody in Europe figured that out.
Yeah. We're like, well, thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Nice. Right.
Okay, so the next one is now two children dance across the godswood, hooting at one another as they dueled with broken branches. So
You know what that is.
I think that's clearly Lyanna and Benjen.
And we
it's a little bit more of a clue that Lyanna's a badass. It's a little more filling into that picture. And then we have. But by the way, I love that. Do you want old Nan to run and tell father? Still old Nan in the 20 years past. Then we have brown-haired girl. Oh wait, I skipped ahead one here. We have a woman heavy with child emerged naked and dripping from the black pool, knelt before the tree, and begged the old gods for a son who would avenge her. This one's a little tougher. There's a couple of possibilities.
I haven't. It is. Nico, do you have any idea who you believe that to be?
Sorry, I was just reading the comments. Can you repeat the question?
The question is the woman in the pool that wishes for someone to avenge her. Who is this person in the pool? Do you have any thoughts? I don't think I have any thoughts that anyone hasn't already thought of. I think I can't come up with anything super special for it. There's really not a lot of clues that I could pick up on.
There were a lot of random theories about it. Then we got the World of Ice and Fire. We got to see a Stark family tree, and you figure this is probably the mother of some Starks. It doesn't have to be, but if it's not a Stark, then it's almost impossible to figure out. If it is a Stark, you kind of narrow down the possibilities from the family tree and the timeline and who had multiple children. I think it might be Rickard's mother because Rickard was an only son, and his father was Edwyle, and Edwyle was the son of Bran, and Baron's the one who had a bunch of kids. So it couldn't have been. I don't know.
So maybe the one when they had this story about the Vale the Bard.
Yeah. So
the mother of that too, because there was only one child and it was a female.
That's an interesting parallel.
It has to be someone who was wrong. The woman husband either had to be killed or her kids had to be killed. Most likely her husband had to be killed. She's asking for vengeance, and now she's still pregnant with this man's child in her stomach. Probably something like that it would have to be. So it would probably have to be a woman. I think we would have probably got more if we got the She-Wolves of Winterfell. If we would have got that instead of the Dance of Dragons, like I thought we were supposed to get that, right? The She-Wolves of Winterfell. And instead he decided, I think if we would have got that, I think we would have had this, and I think the next one. I think that both of these two visions with the Tall Knight could have been in that She-Wolf book.
Yeah, because that let's go ahead and talk about that one, because that's, I think a lot of people think that's Dunk, the Tall Knight, as tall as Hodor, which also gives us some inkling that maybe they're related. If Old Nan is and Hodor, and Dunk, got busy, then the Hodor could be the descendant of all that. Like, that's why he's so big.
Yeah, old man. She had a lot of kids. She must look good when she was younger. People were putting it on her.
Yeah.
And an old man could be a million different people. Plus, a term for grandma. But I definitely think you got onto something about Dunk being related. There's definite parallels between the whole. You're talking about that particular vision, but there's definite parallels between the people looking more and more grisly as you go back. That is exactly what it looks like if you go into the catacombs and just walk.
Yeah,
the further down you go.
I love that. We didn't really talk about that too much when we went through those chapters earlier about those crypt scenes. And George makes a good point to point out the statues, and Bran looks at every one of those statues and gives names on them. And I remember just having a lot of fun with that, trying to put together, my own family tree before he just gave it to us, in the World of Ice and Fire. So okay, so the dark-eyed youth, pale and fierce, sliced 3 branches off the weirwood, shaped them into arrows. My best theory is Brandon Snow, because it's if we're going back in time gradually, each one of these is earlier than the last. We've got room for this to be right at the time of the conquest. Here's what we're told: Aegon marches north, and King in the North, Torrhen Stark, says, "I'm going to fight." And then he sees the dragons and the army, and he's like, "Maybe not." But his brother, Brandon Snow, says, "I can kill those dragons. I can assassinate the dragons." So he's like, and at first he thinks maybe we'll do this, and he says, "No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Just get out of here. I'm surrendering." So it's not really a strong connection. It's just that we don't have anything else, and so these weirwood arrows to assassinate a dragon, yeah, I can buy that. It's not super strong evidence, but I don't have anything else fixed. I got nothing else.
No, it sounds good to me. I mean, it also makes me think of, look at the Children of the Forest. These guys are perfectly positioned to kill both major threats in the realm. They got the obsidian, and they have the weirwood to kill the dragons and to kill the White Walkers.
Yeah. Some people think it's Bloodraven, but I don't see it. Why would he have been there? Why would he have been at Winterfell making arrows?
I've heard that. I've heard that Bloodraven, but I think it's maybe a little further back.
Yeah.
Than it to be Bloodraven.
And there's no, it's a dark-eyed youth, pale and fierce. Pale, that works, but dark-eyed. His eyes are red. I mean, I don't know if they're.
It would have to say dark eye. If it said dark eye, something like that,
I would give it away, but yeah. All right, so if that's anyone has any other theories on that one, we just move on to the last bit where he's seeing the old kings, seeing the way his faces he recognizes from the statues, and then there's the sacrifice. One question I remember being debated a lot was early when the book was released was whether we're seeing the activation of this tree. Is this like it waking up for the first time, or is this just part of the continuum? Seeing back as far as possible. I'm not sure how I feel about this possibilities. One thing I would say is if it's awakening the tree, then how could it have been seeing what happened before it was awake? Because it saw them approach, it saw them walk up to him. Mm-hmm. Saw the beginning of the sacrifice before the actual moment. So I think the tree was already seeing, but we don't really know what that means. The tree seeing, like, is there a dead green seer inside the tree, or is it all of them? I don't know.
Must be a green seer alive at the time in the tree watching this. I think it's there to show how that this is how they get their strength. This is how they get their powers from these sacrifices. And I think when the sacrifices stopped, their power is diminished. And I think that's why they were having Bran being able to taste this blood sacrifice at that particular time, because showing that, well, it also shows that he can somehow affect the past. He can taste it. From the past and stuff, but or it's just that realistic to him that he's in there, that he could actually feel like he could taste this blood that's been gone for all that time. But I just think it's a way to show that this is how your powers will be activated through blood sacrifices.
Yeah, it shows how dark it is, and it speaks a little more about how Bran does not know the whole story. There is more to it that he has not been told, and it just gets darker the more.
No doubt about it. You got anything on that, James, Nico?
I have something not for this, but for the first thing with Lyanna and, like fighting with swords, and when she was with water, when she pushed it was one of the brothers, I don't know if it was Ned or Brendan or whoever, and she said, "Don't be afraid, it's just, what the hell, it's just water." So maybe we're just reading into Martin too much, but is it just water? in the pond.
In that pond?
Yeah.
Could be ice
It's just
dragon.
The
Yeah.
Market Ice Dragon.
That
Could
pond
be ice
is
dragon,
mentioned
that's
too
fine.
many times to not to be significant.
That's the pond that just stays cold for no reason. No
No,
matter
the
that's
one
happening.
that is warm.
Oh, the warm pond, the warm spring pond. That whole getting in, that turns into a whole situation of what's down there, what's keeping that thing hot, and is there a dragon down there? Yeah, that turns into a whole big. That's another video. It's when you start talking like that.
Yeah.
James, you have anything about that last situation?
Well, first of all, we're definitely going back in time, but I think that it must be said that we cannot know for sure what these are until it's straight up said, and I definitely think that we've got the woman heavy with child. All of these are happening at Winterfell. Every single one of these, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but we're at the same tree, and we're just going back in time. So I don't know for sure, but we're obviously quite far in the past, especially if we're past the stern men. And now the Bran glimpse were tall and hard, stern men in fur and chainmail. Some wore faces you remember from the statues, but they were gone before he could put a name to them. And then as he watched, a bearded man forced the captive down on his knees. So we are all the way past, we're way past the Targaryens ever being here, in my opinion. And we can't know that for sure. We can still be here with the Targaryens, but the Targaryens are only here, is it 300 years ago? This is generation after generation. That's 300 times 2. That's about 600 people, generations. No, it's probably more than that. But so it's possible that this is Target. It says a white-haired woman. That's either a albino, or a Targaryen, or another. And to me, that is a bearded man forced the captive down on his knees before high trail. A white woman stepped through the drip. I mean, I don't have any answers. I don't think we can answer these. They're going back in time, and whatever that vision is going to be extremely fucking important, and to me that means Night's King. I don't know what it has to do with, but...
Perfect.
Yeah,
Well-
but this white hair... Sorry, Tony.
No, go ahead. No, yes, you can.
This white-haired woman is one of the things that James mentioned a few years ago in the video with his mom about the peril between Valyrians and people in the far up north, like Wall. So that's more possible. And in my mind, I call these crypts of Winterfell the cosmic crypts, because the further you go back, you go back in time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems.
It's like
The trees around this tree are shrinking, so you can tell that
Yes.
time's passed. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, so this has been a great time. And I'm going to have to wrap it up now because I don't want to lose anybody else. We haven't lost everybody. And Aziz, thank you for hanging the whole time. No, like Nico and James, they've done 5 hours. They know how to sit, but this is a long sit for you.
Yeah, we do. We do 2 hour. We used to do 2 hour straight recordings, but I've never done 3:45. So that's a new record for me.
So I appreciate you.
Yeah, man, it was great. Great chats. Really
doing
fun
that.
time.
I appreciate
Thanks for
all the
having me.
people in the chat and all the people in the chat room. I think we maxed out at like 340 live viewers. So that's the most live viewers I've ever had. 340 live viewers, and that's crazy to me. So
That's awesome.
we'll go around the horn. Aziz, where can people find you?
All right, we are at historyofwesteros.com. We are at Westeros History on YouTube. We are at History of Westeros on iTunes. Westeros History on Twitter. Westeros History on Facebook. I think you can. I think you get the point there. Our next episode is going to be House Dane Part 2, and we got a live Q&A a week from today. So Saturday the 16th, that is. So that's 2 o'clock Eastern. Hope to see you there.
So please, everybody, support his channel. Please go and subscribe if you haven't already, and please watch that live Q&A. And if you have any questions for him, leave them in the comment section or on his Q&A. James of Thrones, where can people find you?
You can look up James Johnson on YouTube or James of Thrones. It's strictly a YouTube situation. I have to say, Aziz, you're the man. I'm very happy to be in a situation where we're both involved at the same time. That's awesome.
Appreciate it. That was great. I've never hung out with you before, and it was very good. You really know your stuff.
Nice. And Nicolina, where
Hello.
can people find you, darling?
I think, yeah, my channel is on YouTube is called Tina Foyle, but I don't have that many videos. You can find me on James Johnson's channel, or sometimes I'm a guest at Tony's channel, just for the discussions.
Yes.
So that's it.
I also like to thank Don the Krakenwood, who had to bounce out early. You can find him on Don the Krakenwood channel, Radio Westeros, Yoke Boy. Please go to Radio Westeros, Twitter. I'm sure they have a Twitter. They have a webpage. They have a podcast. They have T-shirts. They have everything. Go support the cause. And Sweet YFT and the Roars, wish they could have made it, but they could not make it due to the job. So, hey, you know how you make people not get supported? Support people on Patreon, so that way they don't have to work no more, so they can always be here. Let's support everybody here on Patreon, so we can all do that. So I hope you had a good time. I had a great time hanging out with everyone. So you know what you gotta do. You gotta thumbs up this if you like this. You gotta spread this across the realm. And until next time, you know who this is. Peace.
Bye.
And
Bye.
stay sexy.